It is the best $3 billion investment we make. Were there not an Israel, the United States of America would have to invent an Israel to protect her interest in the region. The United States would have to go out and invent an Israel.
I don't mean to sound alarmist, but most of what they let you read is garbage. Most of it's designed to warp our minds until subconsciously you find you'll take the time to lick their boots free of grime and wipe their minds free of tarnish. Oil is the centerpiece, a body count of millions is the garnish. So how's it feel to know we funded every carcass? That every year our taxes pay for carpet bombing Gaza under shroud of darkness? Or that we spend enough a year to house and feed each homeless person in the streets on turning families in apartment buildings in the Middle East to bloody craters full of charred garments? And our media is silent at best. At worst, they can find it in themselves to call war crimes clashes and label children burned to ashes terrorists who played a stupid game and reaped the harvest. And every time we try to paint the truth, the news sends their slugs to suck off all the varnish and distort it into something harmless. See, the media will hang you by your feet and keep you half asleep. So yes, I'm here to set you free, but freedom won't be sweet because you'll fall 1,000 feet when I come cut you out your harness. They say those who dream the deepest fall the farthest. They also say that home is where the heart is. But if home for you is Gaza, Netanyahu's got you painted as a target. Perhaps it's not the impact, but it's what you see when falling that will hit the hardest. Maybe it's the sound of all those children crying out in those apartments that will hit the hardest. Maybe all those little bodies scattered in the dirt will hit the hardest. Maybe seeing human lives assigned such little worth will hit the hardest. Maybe it's the knowledge that you're paying for the darkest of atrocities committed on this earth that will hit the hardest. Maybe it's the knowledge that we give 10 million a day to oppressors who possess the kind of Medicare you'll die in debt before you see that's gonna hit the hardest. Maybe then you'll see you've always had more in common with the commoners whose slaughter we fund every day in Gaza than our senators and bosses. Maybe then you'll see our country never had a conscience. Maybe then the retroactive guilt will make you nauseous. Maybe what hits harder than the impact is the act of being conscious, of knowing your complicity and helplessness to try and stop the bloody deeds of Congress. And that no matter who's in office, America preserves its foreign interests by whatever means its greed demands, however monstrous. You see, we'll always need a place to train our contras. And Biden's got a backup plan should harm befall the Holy Land. Wipe it off the map, he'll draw it back on with an iron hand. He demands an Israel or reasonable effigy to exercise democracy and colonize the Middle East. Regardless of the human cost of phosphorus atrocities, bought and paid with money they rerouted out the budget for the non-essential things like ever making Flint's water clean. So maybe what hits hardest is the day you see this country for its actual priorities, and nevermore no honest peace attempting sleep. Maybe then you'll look at politicians making speeches like a blood-encrusted beast espousing destiny to empty seats and fellow leeches. As the gauntlet of democracy extends its brutal reach, like a giant wave of trash come to crash on foreign beaches. Maybe build a base, throw a flag down and heavily pollute the region. Rape your ecosystems, gut your fauna and congratulate you on your new allegiance. Oops, we mean alliance. This is something mutual unless you're non-compliant. We stole something crucial on which you can be reliant. So maybe what hits hardest is the centrists saying both sides need to stop the violence. And those would be the very same centrists saying we should all accept police brutality, who hem and haw and clutch their fucking pearls and spend their time condemning riots. But very soon will come the day the centrists all get censored like the rest of us, and pious as they'll try to be, they won't stay quiet. But they'll just end up shouting in the void that they were also quick to render us subscribers. And it will be too late to light the fires. So far away tonight, they burn the spires of a region set ablaze for which you've paid for every pyre. Which is why your checks weren't all $600 higher. And call it foreign interests or American desires. This is why your checks weren't all $600 higher. Far away tonight there burn the spires of a region set ablaze for which you've paid for every pyre. Call it foreign interests or American desires. This is why your checks weren't all $600 higher. It will be too late to light the fires.
Brother will kill brother, spilling blood across the land. Killing for religion, something I don't understand. Fools like me who cross the sea and come to foreign lands. Ask the sheep for their beliefs. Do you kill on God's command? Country that's divided surely will not stand. My pastor raised no more disgrace, the foolish naive stand. The end is near, it's crystal clear, part of the master plan. Don't look now to Israel, it might be your homeland. Holy war.
In the immediate aftermath of 9/11, we did some things that were wrong. We did a whole lot of things that were right.
We've taken control of the oil in the Middle East, the oil that we're talking about.
Talking about the significance of the passage of time, right? The significance of the passage of time. So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create.
We choose truth over facts.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. The foothills of the Himalayas.
Television. People are saying,
We are fighting Satan himself.
Journalists, ask them the question! Ask them! Ask them! Ask them!
Agreed that everybody wants to stay inside this. Anyway, my time's up. I'm sorry. America's dead.
America's indeed dead, folks. Welcome, Indian News Network, friends and family, to the nearest update on Israel.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining everybody tonight. Got a lot going on, obviously staying on top of what's going on in the Middle East right now. It looks like a regional war is upon us, so that'll be fun to talk about here in a bit. But
The Hezbollah has been insane, absolutely crazy.
And it's going to get even more insane because we can't even imagine how they're going to try.
Didn't we say this last week? We were like, this is the propaganda is going to come spearing out.
Well,
just wait for
it was like last week. It was the beheaded babies, that was the major one. And now they're not even trying to hide some of the stuff that they got going on. They had the freaking blowing up the caravan, and it's gonna be crazy, the kind of stuff that the mental backflips they're gonna put people through to try and make up for what they're about to do to Gaza. So
what they are actively doing to Gaza.
Yeah, what they're actively doing, but with the ground assault coming in, and we'll talk about that, but the ground assault and then the regional war, it's going from bad to worse, and Israel's always kind of been a messed up country to begin with, so I can't even imagine how they're going to keep trying to put our minds into pretzels to kind of equivocate this stuff and make up for it. So
yeah, so
That being said,
in other news that we told you so. This tweet's incorrect. RFK he didn't fire. Dennis Kucinich left the RFK Jr. campaign, which was absolutely unprecedented. Who could ever have seen this coming? Who would have known that he had his CIA co-managing his campaign, and said that 5 months ago? I would wonder. I would really. But still, it's.
Did it say why he left, or just like a difference of opinion?
I'm like,
or because he's not a Democrat anymore?
Well, it's obviously because of the Israel and Gaza situation. It's there. This is just not. It's just not like morally.
Oh, so you think? Oh, so Kucinich is actually has a better take than.
Well, he actually says that. As far as I'm aware, but like it's obviously because, it turns out that Israel is a bigger thing than just one issue, and it actually represents a larger, volatile geopolitical hotbox that is waiting to explode. So,
it was another thing I was thinking about. I was like, it's so. Of course, it's unfortunate what is going on in Gaza and occupied Palestine right now, but man, did it end up showing RFK's whole ass.
The entire ass.
The entire, not just his, but man, like
wondering, they're like
the duopoly's ass, really. But
like, and so many people are like, oh, it's now it's not. Like now we're not gonna vote for you. Like now it's not, because it's like
this is the line now that we can see it.
Yeah, so like I don't know if there's any sort of like psychological term to this or any sort of like phrase, but like what, like the idea of like something being like immediately like apparent to them, so like they're like actively.
Yeah,
like,
now that it's at home,
things aren't relevant. If things aren't like actively relevant to them, it basically doesn't exist. Like I'm pretty sure like a lot of people have been like forgetting about Israel and Gaza for like.
Well, it's like what we were talking about before the show, how like war becomes an abstraction for Americans because it's never on our territory. It's never in the States. So we kind of think that we can put war in the back of our minds and it's not a big deal. Let's focus on social issues. Let's focus on, civil rights, et cetera, et cetera. Meanwhile, all this death and destruction is happening all the time.
But it's not even just one country. It's multiple countries.
It's going to be for sure.
Israel as it exists today is not just old Palestine. It's also a little bit of Jordan. It's a little bit of Egypt as well.
A little bit of Syria. So like they have like this is a giant hot box in the middle. Like I don't know what else to describe it. It's a bomb ready to explode in the middle of. Yeah, that's a good way to describe it.
In literally the middle of the Middle East, which is like where this is pretty much we're headed to explode at this point.
It looks like a regional war, if not a full scale world war, is happening. So Greg and I were freaking worried about his kind of posturing towards war and towards Ukraine, and he's the same. It's the same guy, just about Israel, and it's even worse with Israel now. It's his position. His position during his announcement speech towards Ukraine was kind of both sidesy, and that was problematic for us in the beginning.
I'm curious why he never brought up it. So it was so revealing when he did the Israel stint. That
so bad. But even with this speech, it's just we're not like he goes on a rant about how he's not anti-war and then spends 10 minutes talking about how he's pro-war. We're not going to play the whole clip because it's not worth it, but what I want to show is just for the first like minute and 45 seconds, because there's a particular phrasing that he uses that I think just kind of gives away the whole game. And again, like I said the same thing during his announcement, like instantly disqualifies him. So yeah, I just want to play literally like from the beginning of it through like about minute 40 or so.
My position, first of all, I'm not.
God bless whoever took this, by the way. I don't know how we got this footage.
I would describe myself, I'm anti-war. Everybody's anti-war. But there's wars that...
Oh yeah, everybody's anti-war. Everybody's anti-war.
Choice. And those kind of wars are like World War II. We were attacked at Pearl Harbor, and we need to respond. The Ukraine war is a war of choice. We shouldn't be in it. And we look for wars of choice. What's happening in Israel is not a war of choice. Oh, I support Israel, and I'll tell you why. Israel is our oldest partner for 75 years.
You can see the marionette strings.
Partner. It is critical to American national security in the Mideast. It's the only democracy in the Mideast.
Like, we gotta see the Epstein flight logs, man. This guy was on the. Google it. He was on the Epstein flight logs.
I think he was. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure he was, but it definitely sounds like he's a freaking puppet right now.
Do you know shut the fuck up, shitlib Joe on Twitter?
Yeah.
So he sent me this documentary, and it's kind of Zionist history with pedophilia and others weird shit, weird culty shit, and I'm like, this needs to be we need an Alex Jones to come in there and bust it open like he did with Bohemian.
He did bust it open. He did bust it open. I know. Whitney Webb, it's been busted open, but that whole
for Zionism. We need I swear to God, we need Nuremberg trials. We need hate. We need full on hate. We need trials.
So kind of like a sidebar. I know I completely agree, but right before things started pivoting towards Israel, I was getting ready for one of our shows and started looking into child trafficking in Ukraine during the war, and I started finding that stuff. And so you can better believe that with freaking an ongoing war and freaking children being evacuated into freaking Egypt and stuff like that, just war has a habit of enabling child trafficking.
It's way uglier than you think it is. It's way worse than you think.
It's all over the place
than you think it is.
And it has served a purpose for it. It's almost like an aircraft carrier in the Mideast for us. And the alliance is so close. It's completely surrounded by nations that are not only hostile to Israel, but a lot of them are hostile to the United States. The biggest oil producers in the world, Iran, which
oil
is
producer.
in league with China.
China.
Iran now controls Venezuela. Hezbollah is in Venezuela. The Iranian fleet is in Venezuela. If Israel disappears, which is the ambition of Iran, the ambition of Hamas, we would lose our beachhead in the Mideast. And who would fill that? China.
Super pro-war
stance. And China would control all the oil and 90%
there you
of
go.
the world.
There you go.
That would be a real threat to America's national security.
So there you go. That's all you need to hear. He's ready to fight for oil. He's ready to go to war for oil.
Let's hear that.
He's ready to go for war against China. How is that anti-war?
Let's hear that again.
And China would control all the oil and 90% of the oil in the world. That would be a real threat to America's national security. Well, that's one of the reasons. I would say this also. There's a moral case for Israel. Israel's the only country.
He just goes on for the next 10 minutes about moral case for Israel, which it's just
It's a complete disaster. Which was expected, but what else are you gonna I saw another post about someone on the campaign team was extremely disappointed with his stance. What else did you expect? This is what's happening. He said Israel's going through 15 9/11s right now. Watch this.
You know what Israel's going through right now? It's 15 9/11s.
Then what does that make Gaza? What does that make Gaza?
What we did after 9/11, which I did not support those wars.
Yeah, of course. So what 15 9/11s? Let's do a math check. How many people died in 9/11?
It was 3,000,
3,000,
something like that.
At most 3,000.
But yeah, I think there's just in Gaza alone, there's been over 700 children dead, over 400 women dead.
We don't have to talk about that. That's just Hamas propaganda.
Yeah, exactly. But I think in total of I think it's over 1,000 for Israel. If we're being honest, I think it's over 1,000 with like 150 or so prisoners. But no, it's funny you say that because that's part of the narrative that they're pushing out. You know, we were having a little bit of a talk about why are they trying to make it Israel's 9/11 when Israel's 9/11? Why are they pushing that into our heads? You know, is it because they want to equivocate the U.S. reaction to 9/11, which was to start war in almost half a dozen countries? Do they want to make that the same thing that Israel's now has an excuse to go to war with all these countries? You know, like it's definitely a slogan that's going around. It's definitely a slogan that's being beaten in our heads.
Do you want to go into like the false flag kind of like area first? Because like I'm seeing a lot of conversation about that.
Yeah, what you got?
Well, keep talking. Let me how do you where do you want to structure this? You want to go with escalation first?
Oh yeah, we can. Or did you want to just go into kind of giving some background? Because we can do like the kind of the more nuance and give some background information, some history to what's going on. You know, because I mean, as far as RFK is concerned, there's really not much more to talk about him. I just wanted to bring up that first clip because
let's get into the false flags of it then. So like when we're talking about like 9/11 and we're talking about Pearl Harbor, you're seeing a lot of this language being popped around, and I think it's kind of like misleading. I feel like there's sort of like a sense of like a trail being set. Like, what's the first thing when you think of 9/11 and Pearl Harbor? Is like that's a false flag attack.
It was my understanding that Pearl Harbor was either a false flag or our reaction to it didn't need to happen because like the war was pretty much already over anyway. I don't know. I don't know all the details behind like Pearl Harbor being a false flag, but I've heard that a lot.
Well, we showed it on the 9/11 Truther stream.
Yeah, that's true. Mm-hmm.
So like when we talk about this, like you know, I think it is important to ask questions, and I also think, you know, I think it's good that people are like, you know, kind of like analyzing this in like a sense of like, you know, what are like the deep roots, like kind of like like sort of semi-paranoid, justified paranoia, thinking of like what kind of like Western planning was involved in this. Like, you know, of course, like Israel created Hamas, they funded Hamas. Like, so like what, how deep is like Mossad into this? Like, is this all planned out? We're gonna get into that, but like first, you know, here's just a compilation that I put together. It's just shocking. I mean, you can really go back into the transcript and just like see like all these people saying this, repeating the same lines over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
Big failures that are labeled as intelligence failures, when you really look at it, are in fact failures of imagination.
I think it's basically a failure of imagination. We never believed that Hamas had the capability to do this, and so we misinterpreted the signs.
There are so many painful questions facing Israel right now about what everyone accepts is a massive failure, be it a intelligence failure, a military failure, be it really, Nicole, a failure of imagination.
Yeah. It was dismissed as unlikely to happen. I think there were breakdowns on multiple fronts where our failure of imagination.
I think Hamas got smarter in terms of preempting cyber and satellite monitoring by the Israelis. But I think the broader problem is a failure of imagination.
Settler movement was too focused on the West Bank, militants in the West Bank, and that it was a concentration of resources on the wrong part of the country and a failure of imagination, that a certain arrogance that they just didn't think Hamas would be able to do something like this.
Talk to me about the intelligence breakdown and what Israel is saying about their inability to see this coming.
Yeah, Katie, that's right. Not just a breakdown, but a total massive catastrophic failure is how it's being seen in Western capitals. I spoke with John Brennan yesterday, and he talked about not only just kind of a failure of intelligence, but also a failure of imagination. And it's something our colleague Raf Sanchez has been talking about as well in the last 24 hours. They couldn't even conceive that this could happen. But
I think, frankly, Wolf, it was a failure. I know it seems sort of cliche, but a failure of imagination. That's similar, it seems to me, what happened in October 73.
MSNBC national security and intelligence analyst and a former CIA officer. Mark, you were the first.
Of course. I mean, it's clear as day to me.
9/11. Like, because of the surprise factor, because of how well coordinated it was.
I'm glad you put this clip together.
That it was a failure of imagination. They had never thought, apparently, that Hamas could come in and do a ground invasion as well as from the air and the sea.
intelligence that came in and was discounted was a failure of collection, a failure of imagination, of course. It's been something that's bandied about. But
It's pretty clear there was complacency. I think this was sort of a stunning, not only intelligence failure, but failure of imagination.
I think the failure of imagination we consider to be one of the major failures of the government. The fact of the matter is we just didn't get it in this country.
So there you go. The conspiracy theories are already.
I mean, it's really when you dehumanize a population and call them human animals and stuff like that, and just awful pejoratives for 75 years. Eventually, you're gonna drink your own Kool-Aid and really think that these people aren't capable of coming up with something intelligent enough to subvert Israeli intelligence and surveillance. I mean, that's what it comes across to me, just because people are like, Zionism is so fucking racist that I think when you have like 2 or 3 generations since the Holocaust kind of drinking all this Kool-Aid, like they're gonna believe it, like we see the language we talking about it last week with the mowing the grass and the kind of language that they use to purposely not make the Palestinian people think that they're less than human. So that's how it occurs to me.
So maybe we reiterated this, but and I know we did talk about this a little bit last time, maybe not in enough detail because it was one of the last segments. I was getting kind of tired, but as we get further into this conflict, I'm seeing more and more people asking how did the IDF allow this to happen? How did the Israeli intelligence services fail? Someone had to know.
I refuse to believe that there was a failure on the IDF's part. It's impossible to comprehend that.
Okay, yes, we can concede that they're the fourth most powerful military in the world, while also recognizing that things
I think that's also Hasbara in itself. Just because you're funded by the U.S. and just because you get great training does not a efficient and powerful military get to be.
Yeah, and then they beat out the IDF out of Gaza.
It was one thing that
and they won. So what else
I think both Ritter said this. I think Ryan Christian said this. Number of people have said this, where it's the IDF is casualty averse. They don't like getting hurt. They don't like dying. They're going to freaking run away. They're going to freaking surrender. That's one of the reasons that Hamas was able to get so many prisoners, is because they're like, fucking take me. I'm not dying for this colonial state. So I don't know.
Pretty sure they're way too they don't get bombed like the Israelis do. So
the Palestinians are ready to die for their freedom. Israelis know.
I think we reiterated that, but think whatever you want. I mean, this is really the kind of the source that people are going for, and to be fair, okay, let's listen to who she is.
My first thought: so many people,
so many friends, and sometimes again, because to me this is I don't know how to say it. It's just the people of Israel have been, I don't know if sacrifice is too rough of a word, but we have been sold and sold out completely, and no help for hours and hours, and no military involvement, no police, no arms on the ground for hours and hours. This is something that is non-typical and unusual for Israel Defense Forces. Now, I've served in the military forces 25 years ago.
25 years? You're going to trust this one?
25 years ago. That's from...
What's going on now?
I was in the intelligence forces based in the Gaza Strip, as I told you. And I know the security drills.
She was there
when I served. There was no internet, so I would sit next to the phone in my shift of the fence of the.
This is a literal Zionist we're talking about.
Yeah, but she wasn't just like an IDF soldier working in freaking occupied Palestine.
She probably killed some people.
She was in freaking occupied freaking Gaza. Yeah, like
probably threw some like family out of their home or something like that. Fuck this bitch. Why do you trust anything that they're saying?
The security of the Gaza Strip, and whenever
it's
something
like we
would,
said last week, it's like it's fucking cope, man. It's just fucking cope.
This feels like hope to me, and like if like it, I mean, I can pull up the. There's a lot of people who will agree with. Fiorella, Isabel, I know Richie Medhurst, Max Blumenthal,
Ali
probably
Abunima, Scott Ritter.
Yeah, and we'll show this, but like,
would move alongside the fence, I would get a phone call from the human observers that are looking at the gate, telling us there is a chain of command that you have to notify when something like this happens, and then straight away forces come in to look at what is it and take it down.
So what do you mean when something moves by the fence? How small is something?
It can be a pig. It can be a cat moving alongside the fence or touching the fence or trying to cross the fence, an animal. They would identify it. They would see it. There
So
are
a cat gets scrutiny.
would trigger. Yeah, it could trigger the fence. Yeah,
And
an animal.
25 years later, with
25 years later,
sensors-
with internet and with the most sophisticated high-tech weaponry systems like drones, like there is a special system, I don't know how to call it in English, it's called seeing shooting. That's a literal translation from Hebrew to English.
AI
Seeing
guns.
shooting. It's a robot that sits on top of a...
it's a little machine gun.
Yeah, she's talking about the automated machine gun that they fucking shoot.
That they control
Muslims with.
remotely.
Yeah.
So, I mean, do we have to really play any more of this? I mean, like, what else is she saying? Is she saying...
No, it's just the whole thing. It's just people are so blown away at the idea that these people that they called less than human for 75 years were able to overcome Israeli surveillance. You know, there were a number of videos from right in the beginning of the conflict where all you saw was Hezbollah and Hamas taking out surveillance towers and like reconnaissance, you know, or what, I don't know what the word is, but like you saw how quickly they were able to take over bases and all this stuff and all the prisoners they got.
Yeah, like, I'm having really like trouble. I'm having like really hard time.
And here's the other thing.
They kidnapped the PM too. Like, or well, I forgot what the
yeah, they kidnapped the one of the generals.
Yeah,
but that's the other thing to think about is the cost that Israel has already taken. I don't think they allowed to happen because you're talking about like over 150 people were captured, which
it's not just that. It's a forefront regional war, which we're going to get.
Yeah, and the war, of course, and that's really like the biggest thing. I don't think multiple people, and we'll get into that, have said that Israel can't fight a multi-front war. You know,
let me listen.
The view in the West, which I suspect is overly simplistic, is that the failure that allowed this to happen is so glaring that Benjamin Netanyahu will not politically survive this chapter. And the reason that I don't think that that's accurate is that the Bush administration had a similar failure. And one could have made the same argument that it was so embarrassing that this could have happened. The 9/11 attacks could have happened on their watch.
That's not that I don't think he knows what he's talking about because like there's actually like a civil war going on in Israel. There's like a lot of like divide, and Netanyahu is like very not popular at all.
Yeah, that's the thing is like that was like Netanyahu is extremely
I don't
unpopular.
think these people know what they're talking about. That's like why I'm like, why are we going off of this thing? So.
Yeah, so I mean,
the failure
at
the Israeli border.
Somebody who's been speaking on the state, who used to work for the state of Israel. It's like the same thing applies to Israeli intelligence that applies to the CIA. When you retire from their intelligence, you never really retire. You know, you still like pass on that indoctrination. You still kind of like, if not in official capacity, you're still freaking, regurgitating that propaganda that you've been indoctrinated so that you could fulfill that position in the first place. But yeah, this is just.
So I guess we can like all acknowledge that yes. I think we have to acknowledge just one fact real quick. So yes, Israel did create Hamas. During the PLO, the PLO like versus like the Hamas, like whatever. The whole whole purpose was to divide and conquer.
Yeah, it was just another divide and conquer strategy.
Yeah, it was just more like we don't like these PLO guys, so like these Hamas guys are like if we get them elected, then we can call them terrorists, then we can really kill them. Like I think that's more of like the mentality here. And then when we're talking about so I'll get more into it, but listen to this.
Taking sides and picking who the bad guys are and who the good guys are. But I'm looking at this more from the angle of being a United States citizen, an American. And I think resolutions like this really do us great harm. In many ways, what's happening in the Middle East, and in particular with Gaza right now, we have some moral responsibility for both sides in a way, because we provide help and funding for both Arab nations and Israel. And so we definitely have a moral responsibility, and especially now today, the weapons being used to kill so many Palestinians are American weapons, and American funds essentially are being used for this. But there's a political liability, which I think is something that we fail to look at, because too often there's so much blowback from our intervention in areas that we shouldn't be involved in. Hamas, if you look at the history, you'll find out that Hamas was encouraged and really started by Israel, because they wanted Hamas to counteract Yasser Arafat. And you say, well, yeah, that was better then and served its purpose, but we didn't want Hamas to do this. So then we as Americans say, well, we have such a good system, we're going to impose this on the world. We're going to invade Iraq and teach people how to be Democrats. We want free elections. So we encourage Palestinians to have a free election. They do, and they elect Hamas. So we first, indirectly and directly through Israel, help establish Hamas. Then we have election. Then Hamas becomes dominant, so we have to kill them. It just doesn't make sense. During the 80s, we were allied with Osama bin Laden. And we were contending with the Soviets. It was at that time our CIA thought it was good if we radicalized the Muslim world. So we financed the madrasa schools to radicalize the Muslims in order to compete with the Soviets. There's too much blowback. There's a lot of reasons why we should oppose this resolution. It is not in the interest of the United States. It's not in the interest of Israel either.
Oh, Ron Paul, best vote I ever cast.
You're not a libertarian, but
he freaking nails it. He freaking nails it.
He is good. He is great on the foreign policy.
But I mean, he's totally right that Israel, and with the help of U.S. But that's kind of like the interesting thing is that he's not.
I just acknowledge that point.
Yeah,
because when we're talking about like I said before, when we're talking about Hillary Clinton admitting that we, funded like the Mujahideen, the anti-Soviets in the Middle East in order to fight Russia, that doesn't mean that we directly control ISIS or that we directly control Al Qaeda.
Right.
Like, I don't like just because you give money or like fund a little bit of money, that doesn't mean like that's your direct source of ties. Like I'm not convinced. I don't think, at least, that Hamas has this relationship with Israel where like Israel is like controlling the puppet strings.
No, and I don't think so either. It's like I think it's kind of like
it's like how it blew up in their face.
Yeah, it's like Ron Paul said. He's like and then the U.S. was like, let's have them have elections. Maybe that'll throw them off. And then they elected Hamas because shocker, by that point, after it had been 55 years of under occupation, they're like, okay, yes, we will go with the people who are ready to die and for our freedom. Yes, we'll go with them. And then what? And then they freaking kicked the IDF's ass in 2007. And ever since then.
Yeah, you don't think they could do it again? I don't see why. I don't think they.
Well, and that's one of the things. That's one of the huge critiques about the impending ground assault in Israel is that everybody's like Israel's gone down and got their asses kicked the last time they went in. So that's why they're going to be using. But this time they're going to be using the bunker busters, the 5,000-pound bombs and shit, and just completely flattening Gaza City.
Do you want to go? Let's go on. Do you want to go in a little bit of detail of how exactly they pulled this off? I'm not you. I mean, you be the judge of how accurate this is.
I like this channel. I started watching it more recently. So
yeah, me too. Like ever since Ukraine started, I started.
How did Hamas achieve all this military success? And how did they evade Israeli surveillance? Check out this article from the Times of Israel. Sources close to Hamas describes years-long campaign to fool Israel. What you have to know is that in previous military operations, senior Palestinian commanders in Gaza were usually removed within the first hours. But so far, this didn't happen. We can suppose that there is a big chance Israel lost most of its spies and informants within Gaza, and whoever remained most likely cut communications with their operators, thus leaving the IDF in the dark. This Palestinian operation, which I don't know, I'll call Operation Shabbat, started on October 7th at sunrise, while Israelis were observing Shabbat. Within 20 minutes, Hamas fired 2,200 rockets into Israeli territory. The bulk of their Qassam rockets are locally produced. You have the 90mm, the 107 and 115mm models. And here you can see footage of the latest addition to their arsenal, the 114mm Rajum short-range missile system. We can also...
Which I think we could talk about the Iron Dome, about like how it's like that's not impenetrable either.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a little bit. I got some stuff there for it, but it's more like fireworks, but that's kind of beside the point anyway.
The Iron Dome can be like if you fire enough rockets at once, especially with surveillance towers down, like you're not going to get every single one. Like it probably got some of it. Probably defended some of them, but not all of them.
If that, it's my understanding that the Iron Dome doesn't actually intercept. It just goes up into the sky and blows up. It doesn't even go towards the rockets. It just blows up.
Really?
Yeah. Like it's not. It's like a fucking joke. Complete fucking joke.
So it doesn't actually do anything. What's all the money?
Literally doesn't do anything. So part of like the system that IDF has is like it generates basically when it sees an incoming rocket, it generates kind of like a 3D model of it and like creates like kind of like computer software, and then it shoots out a rocket based on where it thinks that freaking generated rocket, basically that triangulated rocket, is going to be. And so it'll simulate an explosion, simulate that it took out a rocket, but there's nobody ever sees like blown up rockets on the ground. Nobody ever sees shrapnel. Nobody has ever and then there's videos of people seeing the Hamas rockets go off in their vicinity, and it's just like a smoke bomb. You know, it's just like giant fireworks. So, but I got some Finkelstein stuff on that. But yeah, so it's a $4 billion a year like vanity project. You know, I think it has more to do with freaking people out and keeping people under really authoritarian control than actually being a deterrent. So, but that was something I kind of learned about recently, and then just it was Finkelstein who said it, and there was like Ritter, although I don't know if I have the clip, but Ritter's kind of hinted at it as well. Yeah. So there's like a number of people who have kind of said it as like a joke.
A lot of decoys have been fired as well to create this mass effect on the Israeli Iron Dome, which got overwhelmed. The local population is used to the sirens, and let's say it didn't raise any major alarm. That was until ground operations started. For this offensive, Hamas readied the stormtroopers from its well-developed military structure, the Al-Qassam brigades. Officially, these are between 15,000 and 40,000 fighters strong. But in reality, we're talking about a corps of about 2,000 elite combatants, organized into 6 brigades of roughly 350 fighters, which then can be reinforced with another 30,000 in emergency situations. It's also very important to note that a lot of these fighters from Al-Qassam brigades have been trained in Lebanon by Hezbollah, where they learned the ins and outs of modern warfare. We can assume that each of these Al-Qassam brigades was given one axis of attack. The main targets were Zakim and Erez to reach Ashkelon, Sderot to cover the right flank, Farah Aza, Be'eri, and Re'im in the center.
This was a very carefully planned and comprehensive operation.
Years long, multiple years.
Years long. They have mouths that they can speak. They can communicate with each other. And not everything has to be through like text or like something that can be traced by the IDF. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like they got
Magan in the
which I think he talks about.
So this is when the Palestinians were ready for the breakthrough. How about we just take a look at the cinematic videos that Hamas has released of their offensive? Keynote, they released them after the attack and not before. Just saying. Before launching their units forward, Hamas claimed they managed a mass jamming of Israeli communications and surveillance systems along the border with the Gaza Strip. Apparently, this is what allowed their fighters to advance
Ostensibly
practically
in the
unnoticed
tunnels.
in open ground. I mean, this certainly could have been possible with Iranian help, but I think there's a lot of propaganda in this, and there might be more to the story. First of all, here's footage from a Palestinian drone, a freaking drone, as it's dropping grenades on Israeli guard towers along the border wall. We can clearly see that the objective is to disable the machine gun nest located there. Hamas also destroyed these guard towers using various types of rockets. We can believe they used the same tactics against communication towers. Once all these positions were destroyed, phase 2 could start.
So how and like chat, you guys can tell me, and Chris, you can tell me. Is this a big conspiracy? Like, how convinced are you guys that they were able to fire? Like, they were already firing rockets like years ago. That's why they made the Iron Dome. So, like, how convinced are you that they flew a drone and dropped a rocket over on like surveillance towers, guard towers, like
if they had been planning it for years and had been like making this equipment for years, I don't know how many drones they sent out at once, but how many?
It's not equipment. It's the most ghetto guerrilla warfare that you can imagine. They're like it's just dropping a grenade off of a drone, like just tipping it over. Basically,
I know, but I mean, at the same time, I think that one of their strategies, and you saw this with the like paragliders and with the drones, I don't think it's not like they sent out like a couple drones. I think they sent out a fucking fleet, a shitload of them.
Yeah, a shit
and overwhelmed the defenses.
And so, like, when you take out all of these guard towers and these surveillance tech towers, like, yeah, like you're gonna damage some of the ability. Not everything's gonna be perfect, especially if you fucking damage their surveillance towers. Does that not make any sense? Does that is that not possible? Does that not seem possible?
I mean, shouldn't they? Isn't like kind of the first?
I'm trying to find the conspiracy in my head because, like, personally, like, I think we should be, giving.
It makes sense that if you're like a professional trying to run a professional outfit and you're trying to, take back your land, the first thing you're going to do is take out their surveillance, like take out their ability to communicate, right? Like, wasn't that the first thing that freaking like when the U.S. did shock and awe, what was the first thing that we took out? The like freaking power plants, the communications, like, take out that stuff. So it stands to reason that they, and as he said, they're trained by Hezbollah, they're trained by freaking Lebanon. They know
100% Iran's involved.
They know how to like strategize for this stuff. So, and if they've been planning it for a year, 2 years, it stands to reason that they were able to accumulate the resources to be able to carry out an operation like this.
Tractor was sent forward to ram into the first fence, and they seemingly do this unopposed. The tractor is followed by 2 men from a demolition squad. One of them seems to be holding some sort of explosive tube.
They were on holiday. They were on a huge holiday.
Yeah.
So I think that plays a huge factor. That they were just
they knew it was a Jewish holiday.
Yeah. So I think that plays a huge factor because, again, with all the stuff that we've seen about kind of the apparent incompetence with the Israeli Defense Force and how easily they were captured, it was probably like one of those things like the commanders or the officers, the people who were bossing everybody around, like, yo, take it easy. It's Shabbat, so like it's obvious why they picked this day to run this campaign, because they knew that on top of Israel already being kind of like lazy and full of hubris when it comes to their position against Hamas, the fact that they additionally capitalized on the fact that it was a holiday and knew that they were going to treat it as a holiday, that the IDF was going to treat it as a holiday. They weren't going to be more vigilant. They were going to be even less vigilant because they're so fucking incompetent. So I think, the conspiracy is like, oh, it was allowed to happen. That's the conspiracy.
I mean, that's really where I'm trying to find. But listen, like, to whatever extent the West was involved, I do not think that they expected something this big to happen. I don't think that this was.
And that goes back to kind of like the major point here is that nobody's the Israel and company and the supporters of Israel are not in a position to go against Iran, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Palestine. Like they're not in a position to go and Russia and fucking China. Like it's just going to spiral out of control.
Not all at the same time. Definitely not. Definitely not. They know.
So-
I really do think Israel is scared of Iran. I think they're like pretty much born like all the other like countries around the area, but like otherwise, like it's pretty like they're pretty tense on the. We have a statement from Anthony Blinken actually too. I'll pull that up.
On 7 motorcycles through the breach. Now during the breach near the town of Zikim, on the way to Ashkelon, the footage is a bit clearer. There's a first fence which a small squad of engineers blow up. Then they advance towards the main wall. Right after reinforcements arrive, the first group lets in 7 motorcycles with 2 fighters on each, for a total of an extra 14 fighters. Every time it was the same structure, a demolition squad of around 5 men, which lets in a 7 motorcycle unit. Now let's take a look at the attack towards Be'eri, on the central part of the front. The video starts with some guys approaching some sort of white pickup truck. But check out this demolition squad. The white pickups we just saw are actually on the other side of the fence, meaning the Hamas fighters somehow got behind the fence. Once the breach is created, 3 pickups filled with infantry rush inside Israel. So how exactly did these Palestinian fighters get behind the fence? Historically, Hamas used tunnels to infiltrate its fighters inside Israel. I'm not an expert in tunnels, but as you can see in these images, those seem to be relatively well built, as they're made of concrete. These tunnels would be hundreds of meters long, as they would start from somewhere in Gaza all the way deep into Israeli territory. But over time, Israel developed technology to detect those tunnels. I imagine especially if they're bigger. So we can believe the Palestinians reused tunnels, but smaller ones, only to allow a couple soldiers through. And instead of going deep into Israeli territory, these tunnels would be just long enough to reach behind the first barrier of fences and walls. However, at the same time, they could have used a simpler and more creative method, such as these now infamous motorized paraglider units. I'll let these images speak for themselves. But even the Palestinians managed to conduct combat airborne assaults behind enemy lines. These can easily fly at a speed of 24 kilometers per hour. So theoretically, they can cover 2 kilometers in only 5 minutes. So yeah, that's definitely another possibility. And such actions would be very possible, especially if landing small binôme of 2 men at various parts of the fence. At the same time, we have to talk about the infiltration of Palestinian assault squads from the sea. We have footage of Hamas using its marines aboard speedboats to disembark troops deep into Israeli territory, right on the beaches of Ashkelon. They could have also dropped off some of them near Zikim, which is much closer to the border with Gaza. The motorcycle units were used as some sort of blitzkrieg. They were necessary to move fast, since the most important objective for Palestinian fighters was taking control of the Re'im military base, home of an important headquarters and communications center. Once they had breached the border, Al-Qassam unit
This was a very smart and comprehensive. I'm just trying to outline it out here.
engaged the
Yeah,
first
let's like
Israeli
remember that they overtook, something like 24 bases the first day. So, like you said, it was like an overwhelming amount of soldiers that they were not expecting. Yeah, it was only groups of like 350 each, maybe at that much. I don't even know if it was 2,000 soldiers, to be honest. Like, it sounds like a high number to me, but
forces. In this video, a 10-man strong squad equipped with an RPG destroyed this Israeli tank overlooking the fence. The Palestinians even fabricated their own guided anti-tank systems and fired at various Israeli vehicles guarding the border. And they also used the Air Force. This is where Hamas released an HD video of a drone dropping a grenade right on top of a Merkava tank overlooking the border. And they destroyed it. We can clearly see the Merkava burning and put out of action. With all the firefights, eventually some local Israeli units tried to intervene. Some tanks tried to rush in order to eliminate the breakthrough. Can you imagine that? Tanks of the IDF charging the enemy without proper infantry support or air support. These were quickly destroyed. Hamas also
Pure idiocy.
Goes back to the incompetence. Yeah.
Idiocy of these guys. That's why that they failed.
They just panicked. They
They didn't know what they were doing. They didn't. It's exactly like this was on a Jewish holiday. To say that they got duped is not a far off question. It's
funny because the guy goes, okay, so there's 2 things. Yes, we kind of titled this with Hanlon's razor, which for people who don't know, that's the and now I can't think of it off the top of my head, but it's the one where the don't attribute to malice what you can attribute to incompetence. Okay, so we kind of feel that like the incompetence is kind of reigning supreme here, but at the same time, you know, we're also kind of talking about Occam's razor here, where it's like if you cut out all the bullshit, you know, making the least amount of assumptions is presumed to be the correct argument, right? So we're not assuming that it was allowed to happen, because that has to take in, you have to kind of just believe that there was something happened where there was like an epic failure not that there was an epic failure, but that like there was a conspiracy, and we don't have any evidence of a conspiracy right now, so we have to go with what we see. And
the only evidence we have is like IDF soldiers and like IDF charities.
Yeah, all we have is Hezbollah.
That's all we have. So we're just going to buy into Hezbollah. This is going to be the same thing with the RFK thing. We're going to say it now, and everyone else is going to buy into. Watch it. Everyone else is going to buy into this, and we're saying this now that there's like, you know, in terms of like this Saturday invasion, there's really not much of a conspiracy here. You know, people are going to roll with it, but you know,
yeah.
I think it lacks so much like insight into like geopolitical analysis. It just doesn't make any like much sense to me, considering the history. I don't know, but
I mean, I think you're right, and that's kind of where we were going with kind of the next segment. But did you want to play Galloway or Ritter?
Yeah, let's
I think Ritter has. He was also on Jimmy Dore, but I just took the clip from Galloway. But Ritter's always been very good on Ukraine, I think, and I didn't know that he was equally well informed about Palestine. So,
from their positions,
I think you want to start it around.
If Israel does
4.5 minutes.
Sorry,
that's my bad. I think I probably shared it with a. There you go.
Whirlwind, and Israel is reaping the whirlwind right now as we speak. It's tragic, but tragically, it's necessary.
What do you say, Scott, to those who doubt the scale of the negligence that appears to have been involved in all of this being planned? It clearly was planned. The build-up to it must have been long in the making. And yet this most heavily surveyed patch of earth in the world, all this was taking shape and then executed with quite spectacular levels of military success, however ghastly.
Look, there's no doubt that Hamas has pulled off, and this will be studied for years. Again, military professionals have to put aside politics and study military.
Dude, it's going to take historians years to just unpack 2023 alone.
Yeah, I know, right?
Just this 1 year.
22 and 2023. Jesus.
It's going to take historians. Yeah, this is going to take far much analysis that we don't have enough evidence for yet. Which, like, I don't think it's fair to draw conclusions, but you know,
events with a professional eye. And what Hamas did yesterday is one of the most remarkable military feats in modern history. First of all, to be able to...
It is a military offensive. It is military planned. They had like very detailed maps and coordinates.
Yeah, everything was definitely coordinated and carried out specifically. Like we saw with all the towers being taken out and stuff. It was just so exact. Very
plan
precise.
This without being detected by the Israelis is, as you indicate, almost miraculous. Now, I have an answer as to how this came about. I actually have just written an article. It'll come out in Consortium News later this afternoon that addresses this issue. But I think this, Winston Churchill once famously said that he quipped about the War Office that they are always fighting the last war, never the next war. Israel is guilty of that in my mind. They are fighting 2021 Operation. I forget whatever they named so many things. Wall Guardian or Guardian on Walls or something.
Been so many of them. Yeah.
But Israel openly bragged at the end of this conflict which they claim to have won, and yet Hamas still exists. They said this was the first artificial intelligence war. That you mentioned it. It's the most heavily surveilled piece of terrain in the world. Every 10 minutes, every meter of Gaza is photographed by Israel. And that data, those images go into a giant computer database. They collect every cell phone conversation, every text message, any email messaging. They have total control. They have human spies on the ground. And Israel bragged about this right afterwards in 2022. The first artificial intelligence battle. We had total domination of the information spectrum, and we were able to use artificial intelligence to predict outcomes, meaning that it wasn't a human being now that is telling Israel what to do. It is a computer algorithm put together by Israeli intelligence, and the Israelis bragged about this. And I will say this about Hamas, and about the Palestinians, and about Hezbollah. They aren't stupid. These are some of the smartest people on the planet, and they are survivors. And as soon as they heard that Israel had turned over the thinking process to a computer, I believe they sat there and they gamed the system. And they sat there and they created a whole bunch of artificial information that lulled the computer into a false sense of complacency. And because the Israelis had yielded their thinking ability to a computer, they went into Yom Kippur mode. And I don't mean this year, I mean 1973. Where, once again, all the information was there that an attack was going to take place. Hamas said an attack was going to take place. This is not a secret. Hamas has been saying over and over and over again, this is coming. We are going to do this. We will avenge the Al-Aqsa Mosque. So any thinking person, any rational person would have said, we need to prepare for this. But because Israel yielded its thought process to a computer programmed by people who did not respect Hamas, this intelligence failure took place. That's what I firmly believe.
That's probably
now,
good there.
The whole of...
But I think the important point that he brings up there is that they had kind of given away their process of kind of overseeing everything to computers and to AI. And I was just thinking as I was watching this again, like, I don't know what the rules are for processing that information on the Sabbath. So maybe there was an additional wrinkle there where, they're not, like there were certain things. Huh? Well, no, because I know on the Sabbath it's like you're not supposed to be able to cook stuff. You're not supposed to use phones.
This is Scott Ritter saying he is from the military. Scott Ritter, Israel's massive intelligence failure. He's explaining it here.
That the set from 73
the questions they're out there. So outsmarting AI. Let's go back. Perhaps the largest source of an Israeli intelligence failure regarding Hamas was the over-reliance on intelligence collection and analysis itself. Israel's protected the art of human intelligence with a proven track record. Likewise, spent billions of dollars creating intelligence collections capabilities, including cell phone emails, SMS, texting, photographs, places of, they kill leaders and stuff.
So, and this is another thing, just before I forget it, I'll let you read the rest of it, but the other thing to consider is how bad would it torpedo Israel's defense industry, making themselves known as having the greatest AI and surveillance tech on the planet, to admit that Hamas was able to defeat these systems. You're talking about billions upon billions upon billions of dollars that Israel, the state of Israel, would lose every year. So, possibly putting out there the allowed to happen narrative also kind of lets them maintain their, their defense industry, and still sell all their products while still being like, oh, well, we knew this was going to happen anyway. So.
Yeah, and also in its own way, you can still talk by mouth. It's not like that doesn't. I don't see how you can track that via AI. I don't word
track what track what
word to word speech. Planning things on paper like the class.
No, okay, I get what you're saying there. I was thinking more of just in terms of I do believe that they were able to pretty much watch. I would assume that they had cameras lit up all over Gaza.
Yeah, but they're saying instead it's highly probable that Hamas maintained an elaborate communications deception plan, maintaining a level of communication sufficient in quantity and quality to avoid being singled out by AI and by Israeli analysts deviating from the norm.
Oh, and remember they were using Huawei phones too, right? So
yeah, they were tech ready for this too. They hacked
Yep.
into a lot of the systems. So
It does kind of appear that way.
I'm sure there was Iranian help into this, but on the tech front at least. But
I think that's fair.
There's enough in the methodology and the comprehensive plan that they went through to show that this was
they were able to defeat these systems.
I mean, it's up to you guys to judge. I mean, I still think it's important to ask questions, and maybe this is something to ponder about, and people are going to still ask it. But
I also think it's it's good to maybe we need to humble ourselves that AI isn't as much AI as everybody thinks it is. Maybe this technology is not as ready for
the border's not impenetrable. It's just not. It's not it's not an invincible. It's not the Terminator like you're thinking. It's much more. Especially on a day off. I can only imagine.
That's where I'm at on it. So what do you want to pivot?
There's always reasons to ponder. So I mean, take that for what it is. I really think that from what most people will judge is that this was a genuine revolt.
I mean, and I think history will show that they definitely did not allow for this to happen when you have multiple countries waging war on Israel at the same time, and there's just they played these games, they played these war games with each other, and they know that they can't win. So I think we'll see very soon.
There's no way they would predict a multi-front war, and I don't think they would think they would be winning that. But either way, we're reaching concerning heights here. I mean, do you want to head over to the kind of the liberal condemning Hamas part?
That's kind of what I was thinking of. Good. That's a good place to pivot to, I think, because this is important because what we're seeing a lot of now is this kind of weird psyop where the establishment left and liberals will kind of put out the idea that their hearts go out to the Palestinian people while still condemning Hamas's actions, and it kind of makes this false equivocation and kind of it creates this scenario where if you're forced to condemn the resistance fighters who are fighting for freedom in Palestine, whatever Hamas, but it was also PIJ was there. There's multiple groups who are associated with that attack. I don't think you can just dismiss by saying that you can't. There needs to be no more violence, or everybody needs to stop, or that you have to completely condemn Hamas. That means that you're giving credence and you're allowing the apartheid regime and genocide to continue. Because if you're not supporting, I don't want to sound like I'm supporting violence and stuff like that, but at the same time, if we're just condemning any single time that the Palestinians try and get freedom through violent means, which the UN has already said they're allowed to do.
You're conceding to the narrative. You're purposely giving IDF talking points straight into because they do this every single time there's any sort of resistance or any sort of
it's that's where history started. When
it's always oh, look at this. You have to condemn both of them. This side's not good, but they're not either. Hey, there's both sides to this. Don't be a Hamas propagandist. No, what you're doing is.
Oh, did I lose you? Sounds like Greg just cut out. I don't know what happened there. Still says I'm live, but he definitely just cut out.
Oh, well, lost connection for a second.
I saw that. Do you want to pick up where you left off?
I hope we don't get hacked.
I know. Of course, it's gonna start flickering.
Yesterday. I mean, I think this Israel Palestine coverage is not they're not liking this. They're definitely not.
Well, I mean, I noticed because I started taking posts from Telegram, posting on Twitter that the IDF trolls use the same playbook as the NATO trolls, the Ukraine trolls. You know, just call everybody a Nazi or an anti-Semite. You know, just.
I wonder where NATO is now. What are they?
Well, didn't you show me that post earlier where they had like one of the big accounts had to fucking quit?
Yeah, they're fighting now because like some of them are still supporting. You know, a lot of them are anti-Israel or whatever. That's like a more wider debate. That's why, and it's more longer. It has more history. But
yeah, that's true.
To kind of branch off this point, this was a great tweet from Nick of RBN. Saying you must condemn Hamas as the white leftist who voted for Jim Crow Joe, the most anti-black politician in the modern era. The man is responsible for the deaths of millions of the wars he created, the guy who created the prison state with the crime bill, biggest eco-terrorist of all time. Yeah, you voted him, and you want me to condemn Hamas. But there's more to this. Like it does nothing but score brownie points with IDF trolls and Zionists.
Right, that's kind of what you're doing here. Is like if you're that's just what the state of Israel wants to hear. They just want to hear everybody condemn Hamas because that gives them the freaking like reason to freaking commit genocide.
Like I when I went.
That's really what it. Yeah.
When I went to one of these protests in New York, I forgot which one it was, but like I had a Zionist come up to me and he was like, do you support all of the Israeli murders? And I'm like, no. And he's like, well, do you support this? And I'm like, no, like obviously not, dude. And he's like, well, then condemn Hamas. And I'm like, no.
Like it's not. Yeah, that's like it's not simple.
Support it, and it's like it's a straw man that they're using on purpose. And this is whatever the fuck it's called, Hasbara.
Yeah.
This is how it works. The psychological trick to make you think there's both sides to this, that they're not currently committing genocide right now. Listen, this is we're really at the point of Holocaust 2.0, and like if that's like, listen, like do you want to be on the right side of history or no? But
they just want to keep their peer group. They just want to keep their friends. Because I mean, you're right. If you're condemning Hamas, you're just giving Israel what they want.
I'm just trying to point out like how unhinged these Zionists are. They'll use any sort of like
wait until Gaza City is a parking lot. Wait until Gaza City is just freaking miles of rubble.
They're desperate for attention. That's what it is.
Like, and the thing that I've been thinking recently is like when people like equivocate the violence that Israel is committing against women and children, is like how many innocent people have to die before your bloodthirst is like satiated? How many fucking women and children need to die? Like 500,000, 1 million? Like what's it going to be? You know, so I think the people on the wrong side of history are going to find out what that cost is. You know, what that price is for them. You know what? It's just disgusting.
I suggest everyone watching this to do the same. If anyone asks you anywhere online or in person to go condemn Hamas, just tell them, fuck off. I'm not going to do that. Just say no. Just say no. Because it's not worth it. It's not worth engaging with these people, first of all. And then second of all, the second that you do that, it's just like Nick is saying here, you're purposely giving in to the IDF. You're conceding to Hasbara narratives. That's what you're doing. And you're hurting the resistance. There's no use for you.
Yeah, because it's not a neutral phrase, is it?
It's not neutral.
Not neutral at all. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good take. Do you want to show?
Here's another clown. The Pac-Man. I mean, you want to pull up some of the?
I was gonna say you could play because we're still on the, like condemning Hamas. You could actually start with kind of Yanis's clip if you wanted to. Or if you wanted to do Pac-Man, we can do Pac-Man and then go back to you.
Let's watch this clown for a second on like
It's just
1.25
ridiculous.
speed.
We are actual leftists. We don't support authoritarian regimes. We don't support terrorism. We don't support
You're a tanky
violence of any kind, and that includes violence coming from his
liberal.
I fucking hate this guy. Like, this is like the worst.
I've never actually seen his show. I just know his name and I know.
I mean, I remember bits and pieces back in like my shitlib era, which is like,
why would you make an indie show that is liberal?
It's MSNBC on like you. That's all it is.
It's like what's his name? The guy who does freaking Majority Report. It's like the same shit or freaking or like TYT stuff.
MSNBC contract
from Israel to innocent Palestinians. We don't support movements that subjugate women or LGBT people or those who say, I don't want to be part of this religion anymore.
Do you notice that's another point that they're pulling up now? Now all of a sudden, all the right wingers. This is with the right wingers too. Now all of a sudden, all the right wingers now suddenly they care about LGBTQ people. I'm gonna pull.
This is so ridiculous. Yeah, like, and we'll just throw in there because that was one of the things RFK would say is like, oh, the most democratic nation is Israel, and you're not allowed to be gay or whatever, and like under Hamas, and it's just come on, man, like that you're getting away from the whole point. These people are living under apartheid. What are you talking about freaking LGBT rights for? Like, get your head straight. So it's just bizarre.
Anymore. We feel terribly for the Palestinians living under Hamas. Lots of the people supporting Hamas in the West would be killed by Hamas or at least subjugated. And that's lost on many of the so-called progressives on the left. So we need to make sure that
Does anyone really believe that?
Which part? That progressives are on the left?
No, well, that. And then also, does anyone believe that, like, well, I guess we'll show, but like, does anyone really believe that Hamas could like kill them? I've talked to plenty of like Palestinians who like really, really fucking hate Zionists, and they seem, it doesn't seem.
I mean, I've seen videos, but we have so much content as it is. But I've seen videos of Hamas. Like, there was actually an article from Electronic Intifada where they had a radio broadcast with a lady who went on Israel state media and said that she was in one of the kibbutz and wasn't hurt by Hamas. There was other instances where they, refused to hurt any women or children. We're helping them out. There's videos of them pushing a stroller around. So there's a lot of stuff that just kind of goes against that narrative anyway.
Watch these talking points. Look at this. This is in response to Kim Iverson. This is Greg Price, famous, like, whatever he is, like reporter, like right winger. I don't know why he talks about this stuff. Perhaps he's Jewish. I don't know. Whatever. She's apparently unaware that over 1 million Jews were expelled from Arab lands and fled to Israel when it became a state.
Just making shit up. That's not
just straight up imagination. That gay people are executed in Gaza, making them, in fact, not liberal. Who suddenly they care? All of a sudden, the LGBTQ stuff is important now. All of a sudden, now it's a level of ignorance where they have to. But didn't you know Gaza? They don't.
Yeah, just like reaching, grasping at straws, man.
Absolutely reaching, and it's pathetic, like how far and desperate they are. You have to condemn Hamas. That's what I'm hearing all the time. Dude.
We don't ignore death and suffering on any side. On any side, it's a disaster. It also has to be recognized that after a terrorist attack, countries will defend themselves. Apply what happened here with Hamas to anywhere around the world. And we
where else
saying,
is there apartheid?
The victims have to defend themselves. Now, do they defend?
Where else is apartheid?
Where else did that happen?
Where else, Pac-Man? Where else is there apartheid? Where else is there an open air prison? Like, tell me.
So was Vietnam a terrorist attack?
What a fucking joke.
Were they saying that?
This both siding, this most disgusting. I'm sorry. This is why it's this fucking shit. Why I think freaking liberalism is nihilism. It's just like they don't. There's no bar for them. It's just come on.
So low.
Defend themselves in an appropriate way? Do they even go out?
That's appropriate. Genocide's appropriate.
You know, when we were attacked by Al-Qaeda and went to Iraq, did that make sense? No, it made absolutely no sense. And so we can still be critical, we can still be discerning and all of these different things. But the attacks on me is, I thought you were a progressive. I want to hear which progressive value I'm not espousing.
You're a fascist.
All of them. He's literally
just straight up fascist.
Literally a fascist. Quite literally a fascist.
I mean, it kind of goes back, and this is another thing I think about. Like, remember that meme, like people, like men thinking about Rome all the time, and like I'm just reminded of kind of like the degeneracy that our culture has kind of gone down to, where it's like everybody's so vain and caught up in this kind of like hedonistic lifestyle that they are missing the forest for the trees. And it's like you're so caught up in like the idea of human rights and the idea of like these civil liberties and LGBT rights and all this bullshit that they're like completely missing the part where they're under apartheid and all they want is to be treated as humans. Like, let's start there first.
Fucking water and electricity. That's it.
Yeah. We just want some food, power, the ability to kind of have some autonomy, and it's just ridiculous.
Check out this guy spreading straight up Hasbara. So like, okay. Jews are banned from praying on the Temple Mount because Israel gave it back to the Islamic Waqf, or that Hamas's charter says Jews are subhuman. They literally say it out loud that they want to turn Gaza into dust on national TV. Like, they say that we want to kill all of you.
Yeah, and it's like this is more. It's actually more projection too, because the part where he says, you know, the charter, which I don't know, I haven't corroborated that, but the Jews are subhuman. Like, who's the ones calling Palestinians subhuman all the time? What was I talking about earlier in the show about how they have like the dehumanization of Palestinians is one of the huge things that has of Hasbara. They just constantly put it out. So, you know, just more projection that we see. And that's like one of the things I'm starting to think of is like whenever I see these like outlandish claims or these kind of like really bizarre things, I'm like, is this a Zionist just kind of telling on himself? And that's kind of where I see it now. But yeah,
I honestly, like, I'm looking through like a couple of like docs now. Like, this is the covenant. This is not their charter. So, I mean,
be interesting to take a look at it another time. But like I guess probably a good point to bring up. Yeah, play Yanis's clip. But guys, like, people need to prioritize and are not thinking properly about where the Palestinians are coming from, why they democratically elected Hamas, and where their priorities are. Okay, like maybe there's some like fundamentalist interests within those organizations. We have to look beyond that, because all they're trying to get is their land right now. All they're trying to get is freedom right now. You know, and that's, I don't think the people who voted for Hamas were probably not terribly concerned about, you know, BTQ rights and those kind of things. They were worried about, okay, these guys are going to fight for our autonomy. They're going to fight for our freedom. Okay, that's like a great place to start.
Yeah, which, by the way, like a lot of like the not like LGBTQ, but like, I mean, especially trans is definitely like a uniquely American thing. I can tell you that, because I know a lot of like Europe is not like, you know, in a lot of that. I know like a lot of, you know, but like there's definitely gay and like bisexual people. It's just,
I mean, we've done the shows in the past to show that it's like obviously a psyop. That's
like the transition of like genders, like where we're kind of like, you know, where we're.
It's getting crazy with the transhumanism and stuff. Let's see. Started off at about 2 minutes. But I think Yanis and Ali Ubanima and really have some of the better takes on this. Now, it's kind of funny because I don't really think he's kind of the way that he's explaining it. There's really no nuance to it, you know, and that's kind of like the thing where we're always kind of talking about a lot of nuance and stuff. But then when there's an apartheid regime versus it's, you know, the oppressed people of that apartheid regime, there's no equivocation, so we don't really need nuance in that, and that's kind of where Yanis is going with this. So
we thought we had Dana West. we surprise ourselves with a capacity to do even worse. The emphasis here must be on the word we. It is very natural. I'm not going to take partisan sides here. It's very natural when we have vicious conflicts like the one in Israel-Palestine, for us to have a natural tendency to take sides. But the scale, the breadth, and the long-lasting nature of this tragedy has been going on for decades. Should concentrate our minds, and we should start talking about our collective responsibility for what is going on. Now, some of you may have heard that recently when I was in Berlin with some of you, in an interview, I refused to condemn Hamas. And as you can imagine, quite naturally, that stirred up just a torrent of criticism, of abuse. There is no doubt that if I were one of those visitors in the music festival near the fence separating Gaza from Israel, by the way, it's not a border. Let's not make this mistake. It's not a border. It is a fence. It's not an international border.
Mm-hmm.
And the people who've been living on the other side, the Palestinians, were not always living there. They were living on this side until they were expelled from their homes to be living in that patch of land called Gaza. I close the parenthesis here. Nevertheless, if we were, some of us, in one of those music festivals, one of which was dedicated to peace, and the Gaza militants arrived.
Which also was, I think, was a psyop because there was tanks there.
Yeah, I don't think it was even like a peace festival. I think it was just a regular festival, but that's kind of beside the point. But yeah.
There was guards there.
I mean, well, it was right next to, a lot of these kibbutz were right next to military bases. So, you know, that's another wrinkle in it where it's not like they were just going into these freaking settlements and just going into civilian settlements. Like, no, there's military bases by a lot of them. You know, there's military infrastructure by a lot of them.
No doubt they would have gunned me down. There's no doubt that they would have even maybe taken me hostage. Those scenes are atrocious. There can be no justification, and there can be no, absolutely no way of presenting it as justified. But I'm not going to condemn the Hamas assault on Israel. Those who want me and you and others to condemn Hamas killing spree are insisting that we, for whom every loss of a human being, every severed limb, every blinded eye, every broken finger is a tragedy for which we consider even ourselves to be responsible. They want us effectively to take the side of the state of Israel. That I shall never do, speaking for myself. And who exactly are they who are demanding of us to condemn Hamas? Let's be clear. These are the same people who look the other way when Israeli army, soldiers, kill unarmed journalists. They kill nurses, doctors, children. They're the people who remember international law, remember the United Nations and its charter. They remember the Geneva Convention on war crimes only when the victims are Israeli. Somehow, it escapes their mind. All these things, the UN Charter, international law, escapes from their mind when it's Palestinians. The people who are actually...
It's crazy how that works, right?
Yeah.
Insisting that we shouldn't condemn Hamas are the very people who are outraged that women and children are victims and hostages. Well, I am outraged. But are they outraged that for years women and children are kept in Israeli prisons? Where was their outrage about them? They're the same people who support, and maybe if they're pressed, they will not say that they support it, but at least they tolerate the ritual humiliation to which West Bank Palestinians are treated every day, every night of their lives by an apartheid regime much worse than anything that the boys introduced in South Africa.
So I think we kind of get the picture there. So, you know, his entire thing, that channel that he's on is pretty good in itself. But I think he makes a good point. It's kind of the same thing that CJ was saying. You know, it's that by condemning Hamas, you're taking the side of Israel, and you have to decide whether you're willing to take the side of Israel or not. And he gives plenty of context of like why, if you're going to condemn him, how about condemning Israel for all the atrocities caused over the last 75 years? If you're not going to do that, then why do we need to condemn what's happening in Palestine?
This is like asking Anne Frank to like be like they go to jail for like throwing a rock at like a Nazi soldier. That's basically what.
Yeah, I know, it's so bad.
No, because Israel is almost entirely funded by the West, and we have the full backing support of probably a lot of EU countries as well. And Joe Biden even admits himself it's a proxy in order to further our geopolitical interests in the Middle East and basically have endless.
Well, it's the aircraft carrier in the desert or whatever, the unsinkable aircraft carrier is what they call it. So yeah, obviously like a huge, like we're not going to kid around that it's not like a geostrategic position for the military industrial complex. Like we know that. But it's almost like that's the only thing, and RFK admitted that it was because of oil too. It's fucking cynical. But yeah, so
you want to play this Norman Finkelstein clip?
Yeah, so let's do we'll start with the one from Democracy Now! So I think there's some interesting stuff that Norm Finkelstein. So more stuff that I wanted to get into was kind of debunking some of the common Hasbara that we've seen, not only over the last week, but what we've seen over the years, So there's this one from Democracy Now! We can start at 3 minutes. Sorry, I'm going to get better at, or which one are you? Yeah, you're doing the Democracy Now! One. So first off, I know earlier in the show, I was talking about, at about 3 minutes. I was talking earlier about my newly found skepticism towards the Iron Dome. I think Norm Finkelstein does a kind of good breakdown on it. He's written kind of like an authoritative book on Gaza. I kind of am interested to read it now, but I think most people in the chat are pretty familiar with Norm Finkelstein anyway and value his opinion, so I'll kind of let him speak for himself. But this first segment is about Iron Dome and the rockets.
Critical human rights organizations repeat these numbers. They talk about Grad missiles and Fajr missiles. What is Gaza? What are its weapons? What is its arsenal? Let's take the last attack. We know exactly how much damage was done by these weapons. There were 5,000 so-called rockets and 2,000 mortar shells fired at Israel. So altogether, that's 7,000 projectiles. You know the damage done? Israel's Ministry of Foreign Affairs had a diary listing all the damage done each day. 5,000 rockets, 2,000 mortar shells, one house was destroyed. One house. How is it possible that 5,000 rockets and 2,000 mortar shells can only destroy one house? Because they're not rockets. They're fireworks. They're enhanced fireworks.
What do you mean by that?
Well, they're not rockets. The problem is that Hamas and Israel have a mutual stake in pretending they're rockets.
This is really important.
Hamas pretends they're rockets so it can show its people armed resistance works. See how afraid they are of us? And Israel pretends they're rockets so it can say we're acting in self-defense. But they're not rockets. They're just enhanced fireworks. Even if you factor in Iron Dome, okay? I don't have the time to go into the details, but your listeners, or some of them know because you had to
explain what Iron Dome is.
Iron Dome was their so-called anti-missile defense system. And they claimed that one of the reasons so little damage was done was because of their technological wizardry, namely Iron Dome anti-missile defense system. Number one, Iron Dome was only located near the major urban centers of Israel. Number two, only 840 rockets were fired towards those major urban centers. Number three, Iron Dome according to the official Israeli numbers, it deflected about 740 of those rockets. According to Theodore Postal, who you had on your program, the expert on anti-missile technology from MIT, he said its efficacy rate was about 5%, which means it deflected about 40 rockets. But let's even take the Israeli numbers. Let's say it deflected 700.
Wait, so you want to call this a false flag? Dude, come on.
Dude,
that's pathetic.
5%. Like I said, it's a complete fraud. It's a complete fraud.
How much money was that?
We send something like $3.4 billion a year for
What
Iron Dome
the
funding.
fuck? $4 billion for that shit?
Mm-hmm.
Holy fuck.
We've been I think it might be in this interview at another point, but since Israel was created in 1947, we sent over $100 billion to Israel for Iron Dome and military. But yeah, it's just crazy. Like 5%, and there's more articles and stuff. Like this isn't like the first thing I came across of people talking about Iron Dome not being real. This is like probably like the fourth or fifth thing I came across.
Rockets. Let's take that number. That still leaves thousands and thousands and thousands of rockets which weren't deflected. 40% of them landed in the border area where there was no Iron Dome. So how can it be that only one house was destroyed? Because they're not rockets.
So why does Hamas do it?
Why does Hamas do it? I think part of it is because their claim to fame is they're an armed resistance. They want to distinguish themselves from the Palestinian Authority. So they claim we're still resisting. Number two, I think they really believe their own propaganda. Because they see Israel saying,
they freak out,
causing us, so much damage and destruction and so forth. I think part of it, you have to remember, no offense to them, but they live in a hermetically sealed society. Most of the Hamas leaders, they're just recently out of spending 10 years in jail, 15 years in jail. They're very inexperienced because Israel eliminated the first line, the second line, the third line of the Hamas leadership. So don't attribute, great strategic thinking to them. They're living in this tiny, isolated, hermetically sealed enclave. And I think they actually have internalized a lot of the Israeli propaganda.
So that's probably good for
Operation Cast.
So that's probably good for that section. So as you can see, Norm Finkelstein, he's the guy who will read every single document, all the official stuff. He's like a numbers guy, and he's like, it only works 5% of the time. As I was kind of hinting at earlier, it doesn't actually intercept; it just blows up in the sky, and that they mostly shoot fireworks. And you can see tons of videos. Like even the guy, the history guy that we showed earlier, he said that a lot of the rockets are decoys. No, all the rockets are decoys. So that it's just funny, and you can kind of see. I think it's interesting how he says that they're both Israel and Hamas are in on the game because they both stand to gain from it, which is like a very interesting thing to see, like consider. Like they're really doing this kind of fake circus act to appeal to their own interests at the same time. It's a very bizarre arrangement that Israel and Hamas have with Iron Dome and the rockets, because it's the more I see about it, the more obvious it is that it's a complete fabrication and it's just a fucking circus act. But the next part, that's 36 minutes in. So this is actually really important because as I just mentioned, I just saw like Finkelstein goes into a lot about numbers and breaking down like the rule of the law and being really objective on his analysis of this. So what he talks about here is the human shields narrative. And, you guys can believe whatever you want. Like, just my position on it is that it's overblown. And my position on it is also that Israel does a lot of projection. And I have seen videos. I've seen more videos of Israel shooting from behind civilians than I have of Hamas doing the same thing. So anyway, I want to hear, like, there's a few minutes here where Norm Finkelstein goes into kind of the human shields thing and the legalese behind it and the UN behind it. So we'll let it play.
Clear. There are a large number of supporters of the Palestinian Authority who live in Gaza. They had many harsh things to say about Hamas, but among the charges they leveled was not the charge that Hamas was using Palestinians as human shields. Operation Protective Edge. Again, there is no evidence. I've read through all the human rights reports. None of them finds any evidence of human shielding. What they do claim they find is there's a technical term in international law that when you're engaging in a military combat, you have to take all feasible precautions to protect civilians. And that if you are fighting in the vicinity of civilians, you are then guilty of a violation of international law. It's not a war crime, it's a violation of international law. They claim Hamas fired or attacked Israel in the vicinity of civilians, so was guilty of not taking all feasible precautions, which is different than human shielding, which is a conscious practice of, as it were, inserting a human being between you and the enemy, for which there's no evidence. But the feasible precautions, I'm not going to make excuses. I have my prejudices, I have my biases, but I'm also scrupulous. I am very careful with facts, because I know when you make one error or two errors, you're going to have somebody who's going to come along and say, this book is replete with errors, but for reasons of space, I can only mention two. So you're held to a very stringent standard. When you're in my position, you can't even make two errors. So I'm very careful, and I'm not trying to make excuses. But we have to remember two facts. What does Gaza look like? What does the law say? Gaza, you are slightly, just a little bit off in what you said in the first part. It's not the most densely populated place in the world, but it's among the most densely populated.
I think it is now.
Than Tokyo.
It has to be. It has to be.
I think it is now. This is from about 5 years ago, and they're at like 2.3 million now, and I think they were under 2 million during this interview. So I think at this point they are.
And so it's very difficult to wage an armed struggle and not be around people. Number two, the law says all feasible precautions. If you're living in a densely populated area, then there's not much feasibility.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to show not only that Hamas fighters were in the civilians, you also have to show they had no option. And none of the human rights organizations were able to do so. But then Amnesty says something outrageous, in my opinion, outrageous. You know what it says? It says that Hamas should go to open areas and fight in the open areas of Gaza. Now,
so they can get airstrike?
That might sound reasonable. Except for, number one, there are very few open areas in Gaza. Number two, the law does not say you have to do that. The law does not say you have to relocate all your troops in an open area.
So that's probably good for that.
But
They
then
kind of get the
number three.
picture, huh? So, you know, strictly from a UN legalese, like letter of the law perspective, what seems to have happened is that Israel, what's the word I'm looking for, embellished the violation that Hamas committed because it's unreasonable for them to expect them to not be around other people, right? And they turned it into, oh, they're using them as human shields. So I think that's kind of how it metastasized, and I think that Finkelstein gives a pretty good breakdown on, you know, why we should frame that properly and why we should look at that the proper context and not get caught up in just slogans that we're repeating that is just Hasbara. So we got here. I think this is the other one with so this one actually came out from yesterday. This with Al Jazeera. This is Norm Finkelstein yesterday. Talks about a couple things about collective punishment and the likelihood of war. So also really good stuff. So the other clip from Democracy Now! Is from a few years ago, but this is from literally yesterday. So he's talking, you know, very relevant.
Well, here's AOC acknowledging it. This is collective punishment violation of international law. We cannot starve nearly to death over the horrific actions of Hamas. Horrific actions of Hamas.
There's the gotta throw that in there. Gotta throw that in there. You gotta.
They have to frame this away, being like, oh, Hamas is actually bad for Palestine. It's not us though. We're not dropping any bombs on children. It's Hamas.
It's the new safe and effective.
Hamas is simply forcing us to drop bombs on children. I'm sorry, but just blame Hamas. It's their fault. Let's watch this video.
But yeah, it really isn't a neutral thing at all.
Because we continue our special
25 seconds.
The punishment on a vast scale.
Well, I think it's rather more than collective punishment. There are different gradations in international law. One gradation would be collective punishment. A second level would be a war crime. A third level would be a crime against humanity. And a fourth level would be the crime of genocide. I would say this particular operation is somewhere between a crime against humanity and genocide under international law. There are fine points, but roughly I would locate it between those two categories.
Given what you say, I mean, cutting off electricity, food and water, how can that be squared with the rules of war, as it were, and international conventions?
Well, it obviously can't be squared with the laws of what's called international humanitarian law, or the laws of war. The cutting off of water, cutting off of electricity, fuel, and food to a civilian population. If you bear in mind Prime Minister Netanyahu's claim that this situation will go on for a protracted period of time. If you connect those two facts, protracted period of time, no food,
genocide,
no water, no electricity, then it's hard for anyone to conceive that being anything but the crime under international law, but the crime of genocide.
Let's pause right there really quick. So this is really interesting because you see this all over social media, especially, but you're going to see it more probably in the coming days, weeks, etc., from politicians using the framing of collective punishment so they can still come across like they're kind of giving credit where credit's due to the atrocities that are being committed against the Gazans, but at the same time they are also, like, by calling it collective punishment, they're not calling it genocide, they're not calling it ethnic cleansing, so they're already kind of downplaying it by using that framing. You get what I'm saying? Yeah. Like they're like, by calling it collective punishment, yes, you are saying something that's technically the truth, but it's worse than that. It's way worse than that. We should be calling it a humanitarian crisis or a crime against humanity or fucking genocide. Like, we really should be calling it ethnic cleansing, but none of these fucking liberals will fucking do that, or conservatives for that matter.
I like this point from Desert Mantis. It's important to understand that it's a battle for liberation. Solutions are messy, and do people condemn colonial Americans for? Do you condemn the American British, the Americans for revolting? I want to ask all these conservatives, like, what about all the British that the Americans killed during the American Revolution? Do you condemn them?
Slave revolts and freaking
killed all those British soldiers? What about the I'm not too early American history. What's that famous like shootout?
There was a bunch of stuff. I can't. I'm not. So I need to read.
American
what's his name
Revolution
again?
is kind of boring anyway, but yeah, it's a scam anyway.
But yeah, revolutions
all based on industry.
Require violence because the rulers will never give up their power willingly. The Palestinians, there was March of Return in 2019, and Israel sniped over 2,000, something like 2,000 people. People who were completely unarmed and just walking, because March of Return, they were supposed to there was this thing where they were supposed to be able to go back to their homeland. They were just walking towards the fences, completely unarmed or with nothing more than freaking rocks and sticks. And Israeli snipers were shooting them. So there's a history of Palestinians doing nonviolent resistance and still getting killed and still getting shot and still getting their shit blown up. And so, I know that violence is unfortunately necessary. That's just the way it is. So I think it's a good point as well.
And that doesn't mean innocent Israelis have to die, but I'm not saying,
dude, and it goes back to what Yanis's point about how let's remember that it's not an international border, it's a fence, and these people used to live on the other side of the fence, and these people who are partying and at this rave could see were like stone's throw from this freaking open air prison. It's just, there's so many other disgusting things that have to be in your brain to I don't know, man. I'm not trying to victim blame, but I just see a lot of things where it's like to get in the position where you're partying outside of Gaza is just. Can you imagine going to a rave? Hey, party in Stura within eyesight of freaking open air prison, the biggest open air prison in the world. Like, could you imagine going to a rave and like being cool and like having fun at that, knowing that that existed within your freaking line of sight? I can't. You know, I just think that your brain has to be so full of mush at that point that I don't know.
No, it's straight Hasbro. It's straight Hasbro. And that's why, in response, we're seeing a giant escalation, especially this past week. Welcome everyone who's joining from. Seems like close to the album, but
could be.
But here's a very shocking State Department memo from earlier this week that suggests no Gaza de-escalation talk. We can't. We need to bomb as many children as possible to stop Hamas.
This is crazy. This is actually insane because the State Department, so the people who are going to tell them to, you know, do whatever they want, commit ethnic cleansing and genocide. They're telling everybody who's supposed to be diplomatic and vying for peace to not say that shit. But I got the salient quote from that memo. In messages circulated on Friday, State Department staff wrote that high level officials do not want press materials to include 3 specific phrases: de-escalation and ceasefire, end to violence and bloodshed, and restoring calm.
What else do you need? We live in a genocidal government. What else do you need?
Like,
what
one
else
of Blinken's freaking staffers wrote that shit, probably. Like, just absolutely insane people.
This is genocidal blood. This is your country. This is our country. This is where we're at. No violence.
Just insane.
There's no talk. Let's not talk calm.
So that, I mean, it sounds like war's coming to me. Coming to me.
Yeah, certainly sounds like it. They were told earlier this week that all North Gaza they're basically planning to get out. Oh, how great of them for the IDF to get out and escape their homeland in order to escape bombs.
So one of the things
about their homes and all their dreams and all their stuff, it's okay. They, at least they'll still be alive because they got warned by IDF. So,
yeah, but as we see soon is so, a few days ago the IDF called for basically 1.1 million people, which again, half of the Gazan population is children, people under the age of 18. I saw another statistic, 60-something% are under the age of 24. So just insane amount of children in this population. And Gaza City, which is the northern half of Gaza, they want everybody to leave. And that's basically, coded language for ethnic cleansing, because they're just going to go in there and kill everybody. And they're going to flatten the place.
Impossible. The UN says it's impossible.
Which we all know. Anybody with half a brain knows this is like not happening. But I'll read this in full. So,
population of Gaza amounts to approximately 1.1 million people. Same order applied to UN staff and sheltered by UN facilities. The United Nations considers impossible for such a move to take place with carrying consequences. It's just like what they want, doesn't it?
That sounds like, that's kind of the plan, isn't it? When you put it together like that, because nobody, guys, it's unprecedented to expect over 1 million people, half of which are children, to just leave immediately. Especially, as I was showing some coming videos that the IDF has an affinity for just airstriking defensive people all the time. But as you can see on this map, okay, so what we can kind of infer what's going on here is that the IDF is going to come in with their ground assault and try and take over the red area, and that area is never going back to the Palestinians. Okay, so we're about to see a massive ethnic cleansing campaign where they're going to wipe out everybody in that red, and the Palestinians are never going to get that land back.
And all the buildings.
And all the buildings, like this is going to be, they're putting in bunker bombs, these 5,000-pound bombs that are meant to, I don't know if they're meant to like blow up the tunnels underneath or whatnot, but they're like, when they say that they're going to flatten this place, they're not kidding. They're not kidding.
When they say genocide, they literally fucking mean genocide. And
you can also see the green, so that you see going down where it says strike on convoy, that's like one corridor, and then there's another one on the coastline that you can see as well. But they're expecting over 1 million people to go and do this. It's just not feasible. And what's kind of ironic is IDF actually put out another tweet showing that Hamas was telling everybody, no, don't leave, and they were kind of playing onto that human shields argument. But really what's going on here is Hamas knows that the people are never going to get their land back, that this is kind of like the end of the road for them. So that was
this is purposely destroying property that they've had for years.
I mean, it's clear. It looks to me like they want to expand their settlements, so they're going to freaking turn into rubble, and then they're going to turn into freaking more settlements. It's just crazy. It's crazy. We're watching a concentration camp get freaking blown up out of existence. The deliberate killing of a large number of people from a particular nation or ethnic group with the aim of destroying the nation or group. Pretty clear to me.
Add that up. Yeah.
Which video? Oh, is this? Right. So this is kind of how the IDF prepared Gazans to flee. Okay, they dropped a bunch of leaflets from the sky. I think towards the end of the video, you can see somebody actually opening it. Yeah. So they threw down these leaflets. They had the map, told everybody to go south.
This is
and
scary.
leave Gaza City. You can see the IDF logo straight up on it. Okay, so this is real. That happened.
Imagine getting a memo from the sky. Can you just picture this in your head? You're walking to you're just like in the park one day. A memo falls from the sky, and you pick it up, and it says, "This everything everything here is going to be bombed to hell. It's going to be flattened to dust, and if you want to stay alive, get the fuck out now, or we will bomb the shit out of you."
This is coming from people who bomb the shit out of your friends and family already.
Does that sound humanitarian to you? Does that sound like something that's like maybe that's worth condemning? Maybe this is something that's worth condemning. I don't know, but
well, I'll say the following videos are worth condemning. I would say, so you can see which one did you see? So you have the IDF team, but yeah, you can see. So this is the caravan. So you can see that people were starting to listen to the IDF for reasons I don't know, but they probably felt like they had no options. Had kids. Who knows what was going through their heads? But in any event, people started taking caravans and going towards southern Gaza. So you can play that really quick because you actually do see the truck in one of the other videos. You can see it's just full of kids.
لا يرغبون فتات دنيا غابرة لو تعلمون لو تنظرون للشوق في تلك العيون النار.
All those people gone.
Yeah, so there was, I guess, there is an actual. You can play the next one. The next video is actually okay. There is another video that's on that BBC describes, but the video here that you can play, and it doesn't show all the gruesome shit. So that's the caravan. That's the people who are going south.
God damn.
That's yeah. So there is another video that the BBC comments on. Do you have that? I can pull up the BBC article.
Yeah, I have it right here.
Okay. So They actually talk about, so there's this other video that I'm not going to show you because YouTube will take it down, but there was another video, like a TikTok video or something like that, where a guy was showing the carnage and destruction. BBC confirms that there was about 70 people who died. I'm not sure if they ninja edited this article or not, because I thought I saw a different version when I saw this on another program earlier. But one of the last things that they say in the BBC article is that we spoke to several weapons experts, but they said it is hard to tell what caused the explosion based on the videos of the aftermath. So BBC just, they'll go so far to say, yes, we saw this happen. Yes, we saw this explosion happen from the sky. No, it can't possibly be the airstrikes, but it's very, 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 very clear. It was the freaking airstrikes. Again, it's like establishment media. You can't freaking go against the Israel lobby.
Was this supposed to play something?
I think that might be one of the clips, but you saw it and you pretty much see it anyway.
Yeah.
I didn't want to play the really gruesome clip because it's nasty. And YouTube would take it down. But you can see like strewn bodies and lots of bloodshed, and you can see that flatbed truck getting taken out.
No, this is genocide. It's pure.
Yeah, but it's the thing here is that IDF told people to, okay, you could even pull up that map again, because it even shows you where that convoy got struck. So they told people to fucking flee, and they started fleeing, and then you can see where it says strike on convoy. That was right in Gaza City. They freaking attacked it right on that freaking corridor.
Right on the border.
Like, who else fucking did it? So
that's deliberate as hell, dude. Like that's
they were
the area
waiting for people to be in a big fucking group, and then they just took out all those people.
All those people.
It was over 70 people. Over 70 people.
Yeah, absolutely crazy.
But to go even crazier with that, so a few days prior, people started going towards the Rafah crossing, which is the border between Israel and Gaza and Egypt.
Which is very important.
Yeah, and
this is how this is how they're
they blew this shit up twice. So they did it a few days ago, and then they did it freaking today. So people have been trying to freaking leave and be refugees in Egypt and whatnot, and Egypt and Israel has been telling people to freaking either go to the border or leave Gaza City, and they still fucking kill them.
But they send food and water through here too.
Yeah, and now that's kind of up in the air as well, because that's one of the things that the UN, so on and so forth, they're trying to allow humanitarian aid in there, but it just
so keep this in mind. This was on Tuesday. So this was
خليك هنا لا خليك جوا سعيد.
This is at an airport. You want to call this your 9/11? Go fuck yourself. Oh
this is at your
9/11. This is your 9/11.
They tell everybody to go fucking south and go to Egypt, and then they blow up the border. And then they freaking did it again today, a few hours ago. This is a really short clip.
And this is breaking. And
this was a few hours ago.
Here's the thing: they repaired it.
Yeah, Egypt didn't want people coming into their country so bad that they put a wall back up.
Yeah, no, they do like refornications on like a lot of these like different like hospitals, airports, whatever. Whenever bombings happen, they do put it back, like they do repair it. But here we are again, 4 days later, Israel bombing the fuck out of Rafah crossing.
Yeah, this was literally a few hours ago.
This is where people get out, and this is where people ship aid in. They did it again.
عملية قصف جديدة طالت هذه هي الصورة كما تتابعونها الآن. القصف مصور بهذا عملية قصف جديدة طالت هذه هي الصورة كما تتابعونها الآن. القصف مصور بهذا عملية
So even when the Palestinians are trying to flee and doing what IDF tells them to do, they still fucking kill them. So that sounds like ethnic cleansing to me. And I guess if we want, you can show the drone video just because I think it's kind of it does a good job kind of showing like this is obviously Gaza has been destroyed for decades, but like some of these places that's going over, you can see just entire neighborhoods completely taken out.
Like, show your parents this; their mouths will drop. No one can ever.
I think they would do this. I think they would do this.
You can't do. No one can imagine this level of destruction besides the Palestinians.
Yeah, and at the same time, no one can imagine what it means to be ready to die for your freaking liberation. Like nobody can imagine that.
Villages leveled to the ground. Look at this. This looks like Godzilla invaded. This doesn't look like a military operation.
So and let's not forget that they're not allowed to, they can't import. Of course, there's a full blockade now, but one of the things that they couldn't get before was concrete. So they could never repair. They could never rebuild. So a lot of these structures have probably been fucked up for freaking years, if not decades. But it looks like from this footage, this is probably all the recent stuff because they had been taking out they've already used quite a lot of munitions to take out entire neighborhoods and shit.
This is U.S. tax dollars, baby. That's where.
Yeah, it's our freaking bombs. It's our freaking bombs.
Our bombs. It's our bombs. Doing this. That's probably a church or
that's one of the mosques.
Yeah. They bomb Christian churches too, by the way. Fun fact, the Palestinians are actually the oldest Christian community in the entire world. Of course, because it's right there. But
yeah,
also,
I guess that kind of makes sense.
No, but I forgot the quote, but there's some Israel prime minister where they're saying oh yeah, we bomb Christian churches, we don't give a fuck, but we'll destroy all the Christian churches.
No, they just want to cause
it's
fear and panic and dismay. I think for this section we could probably wrap up with the last video under drone video. But you see the mass graves. I just wanted to show that really quick because this is just, again, I know it's hard to watch, but this is the world that these people are living in day in, day out now. Okay, so many people have fucking died. So many people they can't put in freezers anymore, that they're doing freaking mass graves. Okay, this is like fucking Auschwitz, dude. This is so fucked up. So this is within Gaza. So this is how they're having to honor their dead now.
They bomb funerals too, by the way. They can't even fucking when they're dead. They bomb funerals.
Yeah, you remember and bomb them. I remember a few years ago there was that funeral, I think in West Bank, where a bunch of IDF jumped in and freaking ruined the freaking funeral and were shot at people. There was a thing a few years ago where they were causing a ruckus.
Yeah, so if you want to talk about humanity, let's talk about this humanity. They're not given any at all.
Not at all. They can't honor their dead. They can't as I wasn't sure if someone put it in. But the other thing is they have no electricity anymore. So they can't there's no refrigeration, there's no way to like put the dead in mortuaries or morgues or anything like that. So this is what they're having to do now. It's fucking tragic. And it's only gonna get fucking worse, dude. Dude, there's gonna be fucking over 1 million people. Potentially, it could be fucking getting killed over the next, whenever this assault happens.
No, we're reaching full scale war. I mean, Israel's currently bombing 4 countries at the same time right now? Lebanon, Syria, Palestine, 3 or 4 already. We're at the point Hezbollah is firing. This is also breaking. Now,
so Hezbollah has kind of been in it since day one, just attacking from the north. But they've been taking out tanks. They've been taking out freaking towers, military bases, stuff like that. Yeah, this is what Jordan Magnetic. That was the US thing.
That's a fuck ton of rockets. All right. And so we're getting to a point where this war is so volatile. There's so much like tension going on that we're pretty much slipping ourselves into World War III. I mean, we already.
I was saying a regional war a few days ago, but it looks like a World War III. It looks like it's getting that bad.
This is also breaking today, 6 hours ago. Iran says preemptive action by resistance front expected in the coming hours. So I don't know what's going to happen.
So that was literally 5 Eastern. So yeah, just a few hours ago, guys. So
do you think Iran's going to bomb Israel in the coming soon, or?
Well, so wasn't there always the threat where, or wasn't Israel just talking about doing some preemptive strikes of their own?
Yeah.
So I think Israel was kind of threatening, and Iran is calling their bluff, I guess. It's like, so okay, because you remember Russia started the special military operation by being preemptive, right? So I don't know, man. I'll be up until probably 2 or 3 o'clock tonight, so I may fucking know by the end of the night. Jesus.
Leaders of the resistance will not allow the Zionist regime to take any action in Gaza. Based. All options are open, and we cannot be indifferent to the war crimes committed against the people of Gaza, said the foreign minister Hossein, I'm not going to pronounce that last name, on state TV. That's Iran saying that. Iran is ready to get Putin's involved. Putin was getting around. He was making some phone calls today.
He talked to Netanyahu today.
Which I think they're both kind of like WEF. I'm not really sure what this relationship is, but he also met with the Iranian president as well. So there's talks here.
I mean, but Russia is it's my understanding that Russia is
they're in BRICS.
They're with Iran. So if Iran gets involved, Russia's involved.
They're with Iran. This is, we kind of spoke about how BRICS is sort of the West poses so much of a threat that they kind of need to be aware of some sort of military alliance as well. So,
yeah, you're right. You're right. It is an economic partnership, but there obviously is some military implications with it as well, I'd say.
He spoke on the phone with Netanyahu, Assad, the Iran president, the president of Palestine, Egypt. So Putin's had a pretty busy day today. He's been...
Yeah, it sounds like he's trying to do some damage control, or we're about to see he knows a war is coming and he's just preparing for it. I don't. It's tricky, but I can't imagine doing what he's doing. But it seems to me that the Netanyahu reacts to Putin. Let me see. Give me 1 second here.
But this is Iran. So be aware of their relationship already as it exists when it comes to like BRIC, stuff like that. So this is Iran President to Putin. The grave catastrophe that is taking place in the region is a result of the policies of the United States and other Western supporters of the Zionist regime, which are doomed to failure. He's right. He's right about that. He's right about that. According to Press TV, Putin said that Russia shares the same analysis with Iran regarding the causes of current crisis in Gaza and said there is no justification for Israel's extensive attacks on dense area with more than 2 million defenseless residents. The Russian president urged, this is the Holocaust. I hope you guys know, like you guys pick a side. Pick it.
I mean, it is. It really. I don't know how people don't see the comparison between the Holocaust and what's going on in Gaza right now. I don't know how people aren't making that connection.
Like we spoke about earlier in the show about how you cannot both sides to this shit. This is not something to be. This is a resistance the entire world is behind.
Yeah, because anybody should be against fucking flattening a 2.3 million person population. People should just be against that. But for some reason, people want to both sides this stuff. Like I thought Ukraine was really like a moment for people showing their whole ass, and then they ended up like showing their whole ass even worse with this freaking Israel stuff. It's just the things that people tell me and the things that people equivocate and the things that like. How many fucking women and children need to die for this to be okay? For like it to be like for the freaking Palestinians to get their freaking liberation. It's disgusting. But
it's more. But here's an Iranian foreign minister to the Americans. So let me play this.
You playing that clip? Or just make it okay.
So he's saying the Americans sent us a message that called for restraint and non-expansion of the war. Our answer to America is that we do not seek to expand the war, but restraint cannot be one-sided. You cannot call Hezbollah to show the restraint and tell the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu that he can commit any fucking crime that he wants, which is just straight up facts.
I mean, it goes back to the condemning Hamas for the sake of making Israel happy. It's like you can't both sides. You got to draw the line somewhere. So I think it's gonna get really ugly. It looks like a freaking war might be happening by the time I go to sleep tonight. Because I imagine as soon as Iran shoots a rocket or something like that, like there's another 10 countries that are involved immediately, right? Like that's kind of how it goes. I mean, the U.S. is already involved with the aircraft carriers that are chilling there. It looks like Iran's like saying we're doing this. We're mobilizing. It's happening. So, we already saw from last week that the Taliban was down to get involved. We already saw that Syria was down to get involved. Hezbollah is already involved. Yeah, this is gonna get really fucking bad really soon. It looks like it's happening fucking within the next few hours, the next day or so.
So I can't find the tweet right now, but Netanyahu is basically like saying like, no, we're gonna keep bombing, and he basically said to Putin, we're gonna keep bombing, we're gonna do whatever we want. This is again another unaccountable Israel saying. Netanyahu literally said, I say to our friends in the enlightened world, this is the same thing as Iraq. Remember George Bush? He was like, you're with us or you're without us. I say to our friends in an enlightened world, our war is also your war. If we don't stand together in one front, we'll come for you too. What the fuck is this guy?
Dude, he's
this
psycho.
This is a maniac country that we're dealing with. Absolutely bonkers and insane. And here we have Mr. Melting Brain President. So this is how our, by the way, this is how our politicians are responding to this giant geopolitical conflict that's happening right now. This is how they're responding.
This is
Are the wars in Israel and Ukraine more than the United States can take on at the same time?
We're the United States of America, for God's sake.
Come on!
No, what's another war?
What's that?
Come on, get out of here.
You can take it.
Fucking asshole.
The most powerful nation in the history, not in the world, in the history of the world. The history of the world. We can take care of both of these and still maintain our overall international defense. We have the capacity to do this, and we have an obligation to. We are the essential nation, as to paraphrase the former Secretary of State. And if we don't, who does?
Are the wars in Israel and Ukraine more than the United States can take on at the same time?
We're the United States of America, for God's sake.
Come on! Come on!
And Ukraine more than the United States can take on at the same time?
We're the United States of America, for God's sake.
That's
the most powerful nation in the history, not in the world, in the history of the world. The history of the world. We can take care of both of these and still maintain our overall international defense.
Guys.
So I don't know about you, but I really do feel like as much as this conflict breaks out, they're slowly inching us more and more through World War III.
So I kind of have this. It's not a totally fleshed out kind of conspiracy or something in my head, but I'm kind of seeing this thing where the U.S. is kind of intentionally self-destructing because the empire, everybody knows the jig is up. So we're down to, half a dozen oligarchs, and we're heading towards this kind of feudalist evolution again. And they're like, all right, everything's just gonna go to shit, and then the people who are all rich already are going to be able to manage, and they'll just control everybody, and we'll just sort of move on from there. I think they're just ready to completely self-implode. I don't know. It just seems so crazy. Why isn't anybody being yo, we can't have this many wars going on at once. We can't be
Charlie Robinson, by the way, controlled demolition of the American empire. I heard he's accessible. I actually want to talk to him one day. But this is part of it. This is real.
So, okay, I didn't know that. That's funny.
It's diving in head first to collapse. Here is Janet Yellen saying she's open to another war. Why not? We have all the money. We can just do it.
What this all means. Paul Tudor Jones, the famed investor, was on CNBC this week, and he said, "This is the most threatening and challenging geopolitical environment that I've ever seen. At the same time, the US is in its weakest fiscal position since World War II, with debt to GDP at 122%. Can America, can the West afford another war at this time?"
I think the answer is absolutely. America can certainly.
They love it. They all love it.
They get so excited at the idea. Oh, we can do more war, guys. Always time for more war. Always more war.
War with Iran? Yes.
Afford to stand with Israel and to support Israel's military needs. And we also can and must support Ukraine in its struggle against Russia. And look,
do these
the
guys
American economy is doing
sniff their own
extremely well.
farts, or do they know something we don't? Because I can't believe anybody here. The only reason I can think is because they're so fucking cynical and they're all invested in the freaking defense industry and Israel that they cynically stand to gain from propping up the defense industry, So they're always going to be yeah, war, because they make money doing it. I can't imagine anybody looking at this objectively and being oh yeah, waging war with half the world with the entire global South makes a lot of sense. So that's why I think like maybe they just love the smell of their own farts and they're just like completely like into it. Because it's like maybe when you've been in American politics for so long and been bumping elbows with like these like the most demonic people on the planet for decades, that you eventually just sort of like internalize like the military industrial complex being like a complete hegemon across the entire world. But I don't know because I don't know. I would assume she knows some things. I would assume that she's like kind of aware that this is like not a winning strategy. That's what doesn't make sense to me.
Here's another clip of our friend Lindsey Graham suggesting utilizing the beheaded babies propaganda story in order to suggest a World War II type action. Like, listen, well, he's a maniac, but listen, this is just
Israel has no choice but to go into Gaza
Never seen a war he didn't
and
love.
occupy the Gaza Strip and destroy Hamas, or they'll get hit again. The old way of doing business died with those babies. So this is a World War II type action, total war against Hamas. Well, Israel has no choice.
At least he's admitting it. At least he's honest about it. Jesus. Yeah, guys, it's Nakba 2.0. He was totally right about that one. Totally having another Holocaust. Well, come on board, guys. Like, that guy is ruthless, man.
Oh,
man.
We're reaching a different kind of point. This is, and alarm bells for anyone out there as well. This was also Christopher Wray just yesterday saying an urgent warning. Now we can expect a Hamas-style terror attacks on U.S. soil.
Yeah, because that doesn't sound like a freaking psyop.
Is totally not a psyop. Definitely not a psyop.
Heightened environment. There's no question we're seeing an increase in reported threats, and we've got to be on the lookout, especially for lone actors who may take inspiration from recent events to commit violence of their own. So I'd encourage you to stay vigilant, because as the first line of defense, protecting our communities, you're often the first to see the signs that someone may be mobilizing to violence. I'd also ask you to continue sharing any intelligence or observations you may have. And on our end, we're committed to doing the same so that together we can safeguard our communities.
Do you see how every single diplomat in the U.S. Congress is fucking foaming at the mouth for this war? They want, they see the opportunity.
They're ready for it.
They're jumping right into it. They're going right in. They love it. We are when Lindsey Graham says he wants a World War II style action, he's literally saying we want World War II culture back. We want this effective. It's all psychological as well.
Mm-hmm.
They literally had a person in U.S. Congress dress up as an IDF.
Yeah, this is fucking wild. I wasn't sure if you had this.
Crazy. What the fuck?
Tell me.
We got U.S.
This is crazy. I'll let you play it, but yeah, this is wild.
Politicians doing Israeli soldier cosplay now. Just so you know, that's where we're at with this. If you saw this image, you might think, oh, this is a spokesman for the Israeli Defense Force talking to reporters at some building in maybe Tel Aviv or Jerusalem, right? That's what you would think. No, this is a sitting United States congressman representing the state of fucking Florida, standing in the United States Capitol talking to American reporters with U.S. Capitol Police behind him. This is the halls of Congress.
So let's pause
right
it for
here.
a second.
That is Congress. This man is being paid $170.
This is crazy. This is just so crazy. So right at the point, I'm sorry, but if any congressperson shows up, and this is I firmly believe that this isn't just a cosplay mistake, that this guy's basically doing foreign agent shit. This is how deep the fucking tentacles of the Israeli lobby go, is that you can have sitting congress people wearing freaking Israel freaking military outfits and not having to register as foreign agents.
No, but
I'm sorry.
This is normalizing war, is it not?
It's normalizing. It's not just normalizing war. It's also normalizing the fact that we have foreign agents working within our Congress.
Okay. Yeah.
Like if you're wearing that uniform, if I was in Congress, I would be freaking
You got
like
paid to do that, 100%. Yeah.
like that. I'm sorry, like. No, you're a foreign agent if you're wearing a fucking uniform from another country in our fucking Congress. And I'm not trying to like be all uppity about freaking like electoralism and politics and stuff like that. But this seems like obviously such a major infraction that like alarm bells should be going off with anybody in the vicinity and being like, listen, you probably shouldn't be. Huh? Yeah.
What was the Patriot Act for? We're not gonna take like the. I understand.
Here, that is Congress. This man is being paid $175,000 United States dollars a year to represent United States in Congress, and he is wearing an Israeli uniform. He is what the fuck is happening right now? Like this dude, I don't understand. Like I don't understand. This is Brian Mast, by the way. He's a congressman from Florida. I'm so fucking confused because the day before this was from yesterday, the day before that, a United States senator was just indicted for acting as an unregistered foreign agent of the nation of Egypt, which is next to Israel, which is one of the three issues we got happening with the Israeli-Gaza-Egypt crisis. Israel and Egypt both border Gaza. We got Bob Menendez getting money from Egypt. This dude is just cosplaying as Israeli, and I'm sitting here wondering what the fuck we're doing now. I know you're thinking, hey, didn't they pass a dress code? That was the Senate. This is Congress. This is the United States House of Representatives. They don't have a speaker. There are no rules in the United States House right now. It's chaos and bedlam up there, and this dude's fucking cosplaying as a soldier. And the thing is he was in the U.S. military. He lost both of his legs in Afghanistan. And in 2015, he went to Israel and he packed medical kits. They gave him a nice shirt and he decided to wear it yesterday. This is his... I don't know. I went to Israel and all I got was this shirt. And he wore that yesterday to his job representing Florida. So
okay. It's like we talk about, we're bombarded with so much like propaganda and normalization of terrible things where like we're constantly told to like let our eyes, don't trust our eyes, believe what we're being told, not what we're being seen. So when I see a congressperson wearing an Israeli uniform, I don't think anything else but the fact that they're a foreign agent, like nothing else. So it's fucking wild to me where they're trying to normalize that stuff because, like he said, Menendez got indicted as like operating as a foreign agent, and this guy's just getting away with it. Why is he getting away with it? Because Israel gets away with it because Israel is part of our fucking bureaucracy. Because they're like, it seems to me that doing something like that and not getting called out as a foreign agent is like a normalization of like a bigger part of Israel having an even bigger influence in our freaking political system. That's fucking scary to me.
So expect something big, folks. We just showed you Iran is preparing to. I'm assuming, like if they're saying. So if
they said hours.
They said they're going to have a preemptive strike on Israel within hours.
Mm-hmm.
So assuming that like sometime after the show, Iran is going to strike Israel. So, I mean, do you buy that? Like, is that
yes? Especially because Netanyahu already said that he was considering a preemptive strike, and it seems to me that the war is inevitable at this point. It's funny. We prepared for the show, and then as I'm going through the show, like my resolve that we're like obviously headed to is a war that everybody is for is like I'm even more sure of it now after doing our show than when I was like preparing everything. Just because going through all this stuff and talking it out, it's like, okay, they said no de-escalation, no talks of ceasefire, nothing like that, and then we're just going through it, and they're all freaking ready for this shit. And yeah, it seems like. And what's going to happen here is Iran is going to preemptively strike, and then the U.S. is going to say Iran started it.
Yep. Watch this happen within hours.
That's what's going to happen.
This is going to happen tomorrow, guys. This is going to happen literally tomorrow.
Oh, my God.
Watch this happen. Watch this.
Because that's what they did. That's what they did with Russia. So it's the same shit. Like, it doesn't happen until the wrong or right, however you look at it. Enemy does it, and then that's where history starts. Fuck.
I mean, we obviously can't travel the future, so whatever happens within these next couple hours is certainly going to be interesting. An Iran strike on Israel is big. That's a big deal, is it not?
Yeah, and to go with, I think Jordan just said something here that's kind of
Iran
interesting.
does not fuck around.
Let's see. Preemptive, is that considered a legitimate thing? I don't consider it a legitimate whatsoever. Well, so Netanyahu already threatened Iran. It's already threatened multiple countries, and it's all but assured that this war is happening.
Why would they say expect something in the coming hours if they weren't going to actually do something? That's what I'm thinking. But I don't know.
Well, I mean, it's like the thing. I don't know, just to fake out, like in the coming hours, and then they do it 2 days later. They're like, oh, they think everything's fake, and then they, so it could just be a fake out, could just be a psyop, just to freak them all out and get them all
I don't know
hyped up for nothing.
Whatever chat thing, whatever people want to take away from this is literally breaking 5 hours ago. Iran is saying they're coming for Israel. They're coming for Israel, which is our love and baby, which is basically how we got involved into every single war in the Middle East.
And here's the thing: is it really even? And this is it's kind of like what Ritter was saying, where it was this whole conflict is going to be studied for years to come. Is it really a preemptive strike at this point when Israel is making all the threats it's been making against Gazans for the last few days, and with kind of the conflict how it's already started? And so I think there's even an argument to be made there where they're kind of acting on behalf of the defense of the Palestinians at this point. It's not even really a preemptive thing. It's not like Iran is randomly sending a rocket over to Israel. Obviously we know that if and when it happens, that there was a whole series of events that's taken place over the last 7 days that caused them to do that. So that's kind of how I see it a little bit differently.
Yeah. So
it looks like you found that video. Nice.
Get ready, folks. I mean, this is the plan. This is where we're heading, and I love all of you. Whatever happens to, this is gonna, it's not gonna be pretty, and I'm recognizing that. I think perhaps maybe you have a doomerist mindset. I mean, it doesn't really matter. I mean, at this point, you're looking at the geopolitical outlook at it today.
It's not a doomerist thing. It's just what's happening.
It just we're dragging ourselves into very, very hot water. And this kind of just, it's a nice flashback to where we're at now. Just count these countries. Listen to this.
Right after 9/11, about 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the Joint Staff who had used to work for me. And one of the generals called me in. He said, "Sir, you got to come in. You got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, "No." He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, "I don't know."
It's not funny.
I guess they don't know what else to do.
It's funny for the wrong reasons.
So I said, "Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda?" He said, No. He says, "There's nothing new that way. They just made the decision to go to war with Iraq." He said, "I guess it's we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we can take down governments." And he said, "I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail." So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, and he said, I just got this down from upstairs," meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off."
Wait, you didn't have the last part? Doesn't he mention Iran? Yeah. Exactly.
Defense office today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq."
Done.
and then Syria, Lebanon.
Done. Not Lebanon. We're close to that Lebanon because Lebanon is involved in Israel right now.
Yep.
And Hezbollah is firing. We showed videos of Hezbollah firing rockets into Israel.
Yeah, Lebanon's already in it. So
Lebanon's in the mix. We're working on that.
Lebanon, Libya
did
already did that.
Somalia, Sudan.
Somalia
already did that.
Sudan
done.
What's your reaction to Sudan recently?
I don't know, but I just assume that like
I'm gonna
these
assume
African
done.
countries
I'm gonna
are like
assume done.
freaking just totally
And
ravaged.
finishing off Iran.
Yeah, so there you go.
Where we're going,
You know, and I mean, we know anybody around our age, I'm sure, is, you know, familiar that the kind of threat of going to war with Iran has been something that's been in our culture as long as I've been alive. You know, I always remember this kind of idea, whereas like nobody ever really considered the idea of war with Iran in any like real way, but there was always kind of this like negative relationship that the U.S. had with Iran. There was always like shit talking. There was, you know, the death to America and all that stuff. So I definitely remember like my entire life that Iran was always an enemy that we weren't ready to go to war with. And it seems like we've passed the fuck around phase and we're at the find out phase.
No, we're at the. I forgot what I was going to say.
But it seems to me that we're hours away from shit getting real. So I mean, I'm gonna be on fucking Telegram. I'll be up like if something happens, because the thing was like I was up when the freaking you know, the guys on the freaking paratroopers in freaking Hamas were coming in. And I saw the videos of them on the freaking motorized things on Twitter, and I was like, what the fuck's going on? And next thing you know, it's turning into this freaking regional conflict. So
I remember Corbett. So James Corbett, he goes like all the way back to like 2013. Like he did like a lot of like the 9/11,
yep,
like Al Qaeda stuff. So like he does this weekly thing where he just goes over the news like for 10 minutes every week. It's called New World Next Week, and the very first one that he did, he says World War III will start in Iran. And so that was in 2013. He said that.
Oh man, well,
that's James Corbett saying that.
He's
So I kind of
soothsayer.
believe him, and this is kind of like where all the signs are pointing. So, you know, that's what we have for tonight. But God bless you guys. Really,
it's been great knowing you guys.
Shout out to a lot of our supporters here. We have a couple Patreon members: Talking Wombat, Deconstructing Topics, Sean O'Brien, James, Alex, Fuck Google, Ronnie, Velvet, Nicole, Black, Jax, Kitty, James. But we, you know, Indy put together this graphic here. We have many ways you can support us. Either become a member on Substack, Patreon, or YouTube. You know, anything that you can do to support, even for free, you can just subscribe. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. You know, help us boost in the algorithm. We're trying to get this independent news off track, so we're gonna try our best to function, grow,
stay on top of it. Yeah, and I know, like I was just telling you, but I think it's with as crazy as everything gets, I plan on doing some pre-records in the near future. So we'll be trying to put out more content more than once a week, just because it's like, I know these freaking 3.5 hour long streams can be kind of long. So it looks like we are at the point where we need to put out another show. So we're gonna get around to that. We're trying to grow.
And we got other shows coming up. I'm not sure if they're like I might work on a new schedule or something, but no Jesse this week. But you know, we'll have Indie News Network on. We'll have Indie News on Wednesday, as well as the regular shows. Nobody wants to work anymore. Had we missed that.
I love the name of that show.
Have a good night, guys. Appreciate y'all coming out tonight. It's a bloody, bloodthirsty, fucked up world out there, and I think everyone's kind of like weirdly depressed and weirdly kind of like,
Yeah, like I've
been like so depressed like the past like week because like I know
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was
Yeah.
posting a lot of content after this stuff started breaking out, and I was like crying for like 3 days straight. Just like I was like just coming across stuff and just feeling so bad for everything that's happening. And like literally today I stayed off social media almost all day just because like I was so bombarded with horrifying imagery of like Gaza Strip and all this stuff that I had to like take a break from it. But it looks like tomorrow could be a different fucking planet, guys. So stay tuned, because we'll definitely be reporting on it. But yeah, guys, it's really depressing.
On Saturday, I was like, I
Not
was like,
alone on
I
that.
was like, I was like so fatigued and like I was like I couldn't stop. Like Saturday, I was like, they're all gonna die. I was like, this is fucked up. Like I can't like just being like, it's like I can't enjoy my day knowing that like fucked up shit is like allowed to happen in this world.
Well, it's like I saw
This is, like, part of the reason why we
so many journalists. So I saw Finkelstein said this, fucking Ali Abunimah said this, who like I saw 2 or 3, maybe more people said it, but they were like I have been in like following and doing reporting and writing books about and studying the Palestinians for, my entire life, 30, 40 years, whatever. And they still feel like they haven't done enough. And that just broke me. Like, oh, like how, like these people who have spent their entire lives to covering Palestine are watching it just fucking evaporate in front of us. And it's like feel like we have an obligation,
It's a hopeless situation. Like a lot of people, like even normally, like because like it's time that we pay attention to this, because over time a lot of people will.
Guys, we're gonna watch a fucking genocide happen in front of our eyes within the next few weeks. Like
Exactly.
Like it's like fucking Nazi shit happening in front of our eyes. So it's just like, do I want to, when this stuff, when fucking Gaza turns into a parking lot, do we want to sit here and be like, oh, well, I saw some articles and I just kind of like kept it to myself and felt a little bad and got over it, or like be a little bit more proactive about it. So it's just shitty.
Absolutely bonkers and insane. But yeah, stay safe out there, guys.
Take care, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Yeah, catch out the later shows later in the week, but have a good Monday, folks.
Take care, everybody.